What's up, everybody? Welcome to PSI Love You XOXO episode 110. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside Forbes 30 Under 30, aka the future class of video games, aka the OK Beast Blessing Adeoye Jr.
Greg, I'm looking at an article here that just went live as we were going live.
You really did it.
I really do. I'm pulling it in. God of War TV series adaptation has been eyed by Prime Video. I don't even want to read it yet. I just want to ask, what do you feel, Greg? I know God of War 2018 is like your favorite game of all time. Like, does that excite you?
It does, actually. God of War
TV series?
I think that could be really cool. I think bringing the creative story to Amazon Prime Television or whatever, right? Throwing some money behind that, having it be episodic, letting it be really long. And also, like, where do we start? Are we starting with Kratos and Atreus? Are we starting with God of War 2018? Or are we starting further back and starting with him being the God of War? You know what I mean? And I don't know, does it not excite you, Busting? Does it excite you? Game playing, marathon running, training, roller skating, Janet Garcia?
Hi. Not super particularly. I mean, just in general, I feel like I'm not that interested in games going into other medias. Other than like the Last of Us HBO thing is the thing that's got me most excited. But even that's like, oh, I'll watch it. Like, that's the degree of my excitement. Not to say that I wouldn't watch a God of War thing, though then again, Amazon Video, I don't know how often I'm really dipping into there. Though people say there's some good stuff on there, so maybe I shouldn't sleep on that.
They got The Boys. The Boys is great.
Boys, yeah.
And they got Invincible.
Yeah. They also did that. Watchmen. I love the Ricardos. No, that was HBO. HBO has Watchmen. I love the Ricardos as a movie Amazon Prime Video did that I liked a lot too. There's stuff like that out there.
I want to actually jump into the article here, right? Because this is written by Nelly and Driva over on Deadline. They have it as
anybody else think it was Nelly for a second? You know what I mean? This article was written by Nelly and the Saint Lunatics.
We're in St. Louis. They write here, PlayStation's flagship action-adventure franchise, God of War, is heading to television. Prime Video is in negotiations for a live-action TV series based on the hugely popular ancient mythology-themed game, sources said. I hear the series adaptation comes from the Expanse creators / executive producers Mark Fergus and Hawk Ostaby, and the Wheel of Time executive producer / showrunner Rafe Judkins, as well as Sony Pictures Television and PlayStation Productions, which collaborate on all TV series based on PlayStation games. Reps for Sony and Amazon Studios, which will likely co-produce, had no comment. I don't know if I'm excited yet. I think it depends on what it is.
Oh, of course.
Comes down to for me, because Last of Us HBO, I'm excited for the idea of what they can do with a long form, like, what can we do with a season, right? 8 episodes, it is Last of Us universe. Like, what does that season of TV look like? Whereas if you told me you're greenlighting a God of War live action thing, I would have jumped to movie. Like, I think I would want to see like a 3 hour, or 3 hour might be long, 2 hour, like tight, big budget, like.
I like that for a second there. You're like, I want a 3 hour tight.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Maybe it should be 3 hours. I watched the Batman yesterday. It should not be 3 hours. But I want to.
That's good because it wasn't.
Thank you. Batman?
Yeah.
It was like almost 3 hours.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Almost is not the same.
Yeah,
Janet,
how long was the Batman?
Janet,
what is the runtime? I was there with a stopwatch.
It's 2 hours and 56 minutes.
Really?
4 seconds. 4 minutes. Janet's gonna come on here.
If we get to 250, you can be 3 hours.
Thank you, Janet.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Batman was too long, but I digress. No movie should be 3 hours unless you're Avengers Endgame.
What if you're Spider-Man No Way Home? That was good.
That can be 3 hours. Yeah, but that wasn't 3. How long was that?
It was really long.
Spider-Man,
fastest 3 hours of my life, because I watched.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. I left the Batman. I was like, I felt all 3 of those hours.
Some would say that
Spider-Man No Way Home 20 minutes.
Some would say that the Batman doesn't feel like 3 hours.
I apologize. Spider-Man No Way Home is only 2 hours and 28 minutes there.
That's not bad.
By the Janet Garcia impression there. Don't worry. That's.
I will watch who's the director of Spider-Man No Way Home?
Webb.
I'll watch. No, it's not Mark Webb. That's Amazing Spider-Man.
Who did you say?
Spider-Man No Way Home. The latest one.
I don't know. I thought that's the one. That's the closest.
Mark Webb is the Amazing Spider-Man, Greg.
Then who's this guy?
I don't fucking know.
How did none of us know?
It's Watts. John Watts. Is that right?
John Watts. Thank you. Yeah, he's also doing Fantastic Four, right? I want to. If he puts out a Spider-Man No Way Home John Watts cut that is 3 hours, I will watch all of those hours and I'll take all of them in. I'll be in the moment for that. I think that's
similar to like when Zack Snyder does something good.
No, no.
I mean,
I did
last
not
time
watch
that
the
that
4
happened
hour
was,
Snyder cut.
Watchmen, right, Greg?
I
You
watched
know?
the first 5 minutes of Snyder cut, and I was like, "Huh, black and white."
Why did this get brought? Oh, the God of War thing. How long can the movie that isn't coming out be?
Yeah, it's not, I don't know why we're talking about
3
this.
hours is too long for the non-existent God of War movie. It's
I was,
just
I
to
was
catch
saying,
everyone back up to speed.
I was saying all
where
that.
did we lose the plot? There it was. That's where we started.
I was saying all that to say that like I get less excited about the idea of a God of War TV show, but also I still have room to be sold based on what is the subject matter. Yeah, is it going to be Kratos and Atreus? Is it going to be like Kratos murdering his family and getting the ashes on his skin and getting the blades of chaos? Like, where are we starting off from?
I think you have to start with 2018 probably. I think that's what gets me excited because I think that would be a smaller story to tell, and I think it'd be easier to wrap people's heads around. And you'd have flashbacks. I think you tell the story of the original God of War games in flashback mode of Kratos really being, raging out there on the roids, as they say. You know what I mean? And I don't think you even necessarily go too far into him versus Zeus and the Greek gods, and to keep it more to like losing his wife, losing Calliope, that driving him to become the God of War, and then him walking away from it, and like that, because 2018 opens, with the spoilers, death of his wife, Atreus' mom, right, and then the weight of all the stuff that's led to that moment. And so I think, like for me, as soon as I start thinking about that, maybe I'm just I get excited for this. I think based on my love for the Witcher show, which I know, of course, based on the books, not the game, but I can already imagine a Kratos in the woods, right? And like how cool those sets would look and how great that would be, and the scale you'd play with the trees you're out there interacting with, and then have him walking through there, and then have the stranger show up in Baldur and have that huge fight, and then go on and fight some trolls, but not have it be, I think, as over the top as the previous God of Wars were when you mix in more of the Greek stuff, the Greek mythology.
Yeah, you could show that stuff through like almost like Atreus' eyes of like when he learns about it, you learn about it kind of thing of what his past has been.
And I think that works. I think for me, part of what makes God of War dope is the spectacle of it. And I think that's the part where I wonder if they're able to pull that off with TV show budget. And maybe they are, because it is Amazon, right? And like Amazon got money, PlayStation has money. Maybe you can combine that money, do like a Gotenks Dragon Ball Z style fusion and like get the budget to make it happen, where it is you walk up and there's a big old turtle with like a house. I forget what the turtle thing was, right? It was like a turtle with a house in it, right? Yeah, it's been a while since I played
it. Where Freya lives, right?
Yeah, where Freya lives, you have that. You have the world serpent, right? You're able to have like that fight with Baldur feel like a superhero fight. I feel like it's asking a lot out of an Amazon Prime series, but maybe they're able to pull it off.
I mean, they have the money.
Like I feel like what's exciting in God of War, like it's true that the story is sort of what elevated it beyond what it originally was, like back on the PS3 era, right?
PS2 God of War starts.
PS2, PS3. Yeah, like what the collection came out on PS3. But to me the fun is like being able to do like crazy shit and like be super powerful, and like that's a very like, and that's kind of again where like games are a very unique medium in that like you are directly engaging with it. Like part of what was, it's true that when you walked out and saw the world serpent, like that was awesome, and that wasn't something I was like necessarily directly engaged in, other than the fact that I was playing the game where that cutscene occurred. But the way the fighting feels, like that's part of what pulls me in there, versus like with like Last of Us, I'm more excited about that because I'm like, this was already an HBO show that I was just happened to be playing. Yeah. Like that works for me. But like I'm curious to know.
It's going to be a lot in the makeup, and it's going to be in like the weapons, and like you don't have to go crazy with special effects in the way that with God of War, I think you would have to go crazy a bit. But like the personal aspects, I think you're able to capture that, where you have the personal moments between an Ellie or a Joel or a Kratos and an Atreus, and tell that story that way. And I think it works. I'm just curious to see like, do we get the spectacle? Do we get those crazy moments?
I think you will.
Crazy. I'm looking at this DM that Greg sent me of an Amazon link to Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. What is this about, Greg?
Oh, we were talking about movies that are perfect at 3 hours, and this is 3 hours and 2 minutes. I mean, that's exactly what the vision of Zack Snyder needed it to be. You know what I mean? And that's why everybody says the universe, hands down.
That's
they say
a lot
this is
to
the better
say
version.
that movie is perfect, Greg.
Was this
I
movie
didn't say
always
perfect? I said the perfect vision. And this
was
is
this movie
hands
always
down.
3 hours long? Because I know it felt that long, but like
no, you see, Blessing early in the Batman v Superman campaign, they relented to the fans who are always correct and put out the Snyder cut of Batman v Superman in this Ultimate Edition. And it was, for Justice League, we had to fight for years and years and years. This one they put it back in theaters for a night. It was great. We all had a great time.
30 minutes of extended footage never before seen. And who watches Batman v Superman and goes, I want more of this?
A lot of people don't answer
There's
questions
people.
about Jimmy Olsen and stuff, and this helped out a lot. This helped
Who
out
is
a
Jimmy
lot.
Olsen?
I'm excited for this God of War thing. We'll see. I mean, I'm excited in the way of like I hear that and I don't roll my eyes. You know what I mean? Like I don't like,
sure.
I'm with you guys. I'm not like on the edge of my seat, can't wait. But like, you tell me you're doing a God of War Amazon Prime series, I'm like, all right, that sounds interesting. I'd love to see that. You tell me you're doing a Twisted Metal thing with Anthony Mackie, I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes, please don't.
Wait, really? You don't like that?
No, I don't. I'm never gonna watch the Twisted Metal show.
Oh, I'm excited for it. I feel like there's potential there with like Anthony Mackie's comedic chops and the comedic chops of Iffy who's riding on it, and like the idea of like this is gonna be basically 30 minutes or less the movie, except it's in a post-apocalyptic Mad Max type world. I don't know. I think there's something you can do there.
Probably. I mean, but is it gonna be Peacemaker?
Maybe.
No, can't be.
You don't think so?
I don't know. I don't know anything about Iffy. I don't know who Iffy is.
He's just a homie. He's riding on the show. He's a friend of I don't know if I can say friend of the show, but he's a friend of mine. He's like also riding on the
friend of the show. Yeah, shouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. But also like regardless of 50, I think with Anthony Mackie and like what they've presented this show to be, I don't know. I like the premise of it. I'll say that. And I'm somebody who doesn't care for Twisted Metal. Like generally, I don't really care about that franchise. What they've pitched the show to be, I'm like, okay, this sounds like it could be a fun time.
I go the opposite way of like from what they've pitched the show to be. Don't get me wrong, I love Anthony Mackie, but like I just like, oh, okay, some weird comedy thing in this post-apocalyptic thing driving around. I forget what is he? He's not a. He's something. He's a delivery driver or something.
I think he's a delivery driver.
Yeah,
a delivery man.
He's delivering a package.
I'm just the cook. No, I'm good. I don't need that. But we'll see. PlayStation Studio is going to put out a whole bunch of live action content, and we'll be talking about it on this show. PS I Love You XOXO. If you didn't know, PS I Love You XOXO is your weekly PlayStation podcast each and every week. Janet, Blessing, myself, and CEO Junior, Boss Baby, Barrett Courtney come together to nerd out about all things PlayStation. If you like that, you can head over to patreon.com/kindafunny, where for just a couple of bucks, you can watch us record the show live, just like the Trogs are, Matt Grover, the Lou, Emmett Watkins Jr. Of course, if you're watching live, enjoy it, engage with the content there, so I can call out your comments and put them in here. If you want to go and get it over there, the best thing about supporting on patreon.com/kindafunnygames is that you get the show ad free. You get it with the exclusive post show we do. You, of course, can write in to be part of it, like so many of you did. As always, I can't thank you enough. The most active Kinda Funny community we have in terms of writing in. When I tweet out an hour before showtime a question, poof, dozens of responses, all well thought out and ready to be defended and argue with us. I love it very much. Thank you for all that at patreon.com/kindafunnygames. If you need a free way to support us, though, no big deal. Of course, you could use the creator code KindaFunny on the Epic Game Store. If you're using the Epic Game Store, whether it be on your PC, your Switch, your PlayStation 5, your PlayStation 4, your Vita, your PSP, anything else that goes on the line, maybe PS1 if they got some functionality put in there. Of course, you can go in when you're using any of the Rocket League stores, the Fall Guy stores, and put in the creator code KindaFunny to help us out. Of course, if you want this show for free, you can get it Tuesday mornings, 6 a.m., youtube.com/kindafunnygames, roosterteeth.com, and podcast services around the globe each and every week. Of course, you have ads. Of course, you want to get the post show. Of course, you couldn't be hanging out right now with Indy Ronan or Slacks, but I digress. It's still a great way to consume the show. Tell your friends, share it with everybody, your parents. The parents like PlayStation, don't they? Especially when this Anthony Mackie show drops, you know what I mean?
Oh, that was the thing that sells them.
Your mom's going to be over here dialing on the phone, be like, honey, me and your father are watching Twisted Metal. He's a delivery. Did you know if he writes on it?
The new Captain America's in here. They're going to be really excited. Trust me.
They better be. Some housekeeping for you. Guess what? Next week, GTA Online comes to PlayStation 5. Of course, it's free for PlayStation Plus members. That's right. Or is it all PlayStation members? I forget. It's Plus, right?
Oh man!
As I said it, I jumped out of the thing. I jumped out.
I think it's PS Plus. I can look it up.
Yeah, give me a Google.
GTA.
Yeah, GTA Online. Everyone for the PlayStation.
Yeah, like it did not specify PS Plus, so you can still Google it just to double check. But
double check me on that. Anyways, GTA Online comes out next week, and so we are bringing in the one, the only Zach Zawisen, next episode of PS I Love You XOXO, to give us our GTA Online starter guide. Blessing, I came to you and I said I got a crazy idea for a show. Mm-hmm. You know that I'm excited for GTA Online. You know we're dragging Janet with us no matter what. We're going to go in there. We're going to try it out. We're going to do all these new bells and whistles, make a new character. But I don't know how to do GTA Online. Kevin and I tried years ago and failed. Blessing, you need to tell us how to do it. And Blessing said, I am not the man for that, but Zach is.
Yeah, that's the thing is like lately I've been playing a lot of GTA Online with Zach whenever there's a big new update. And like I'm somebody that'll dip in nowadays when there is a big new update. And so like I know how it works and I put in hundreds of hours into GTA Online, but I'm not somebody to tell tell you like what onboarding is like, or like what you should get started with, how to make money, all that stuff. Zach, I think is constantly on it. Like he's on it year round. And like whenever I'm playing with him, I'm always just asking him like, yo, like where should I go? Like what can I do? Like how do I do this thing? And he always has the answer. And so he's gonna be a great Sherpa for the three of us, and I'll be there. I'll tag team with him too. Of like, yo, this is what's really fun, and this is why you should do this race. But yeah, Zach is gonna be awesome to have.
I'm gonna be taking notes because I'm ready to start. I'm ready to start next week.
Dude, I'm ready.
I'm Push Square.
Is Janet gonna be hopping in?
Yeah, she has no choice. I forced her.
Hell yeah.
On KindaFunny Games Daily, she tried to like, well, you know, blah blah, and they're like, no, you're coming with us. We're doing this. We're ready.
Are we all doing a heist?
I'm afraid to even push back on that after Barrett called me out on Games Daily. Like I just live in fear.
Yeah,
now,
remember when you said you would go in and actually play through Psychonauts 2? Remember that?
I did. I
Blessing,
didn't remember until
Blessing,
you brought it up, which was the worst way to
Okay,
remember
don't bring me into this.
Yeah.
It's about Janet. Don't bring my name into this. So like this sounds really fun though. Like me, Greg, Janet. I assume Kevin Coelho doing a heist.
Oh yeah, you know we got it. Well, here's my question for you then right now. All right. And first off, the chat is saying it is a PlayStation Plus thing. Ricky McPherson says that. Then I'm looking at an article on Push Square where they're saying just free to all PlayStation 5 owners.
Yeah, I think it's just free to PS5. Like that's what was stated on the Rockstar's post.
Oh no, it is. It is PlayStation Plus. It's worth pointing out that you'll need a PlayStation Plus subscription in order to take advantage of this offer, but you can't play the mode without it anyway, which makes sense because it's multiplayer. Thank you. We digress.
Oh right, there's that element. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have Kevin Coelho on this. We'll have the big dog on it. Don't worry.
Good.
He's got to come back. We got to do it. But here's my question. So I know we're already starting to tip our hand for what's going on. Is a heist like a raid in Destiny? Am I gonna have to play 80 hours of GTA Online to be ready to go into this heist? Or do we need Zach for this answer?
I think you might have to be a certain level to get in, but it might be a low level. It might be like level 12. Here's the thing. I can definitely start a heist on my own account and bring you guys in. But yeah, as far as like being able to do a heist, you might have to be like level 12, but we can get you there fast. We can get you there easy. It's not gonna be a problem.
Okay. Because I'm starting from scratch. They got this whole, they got the whole.
Are you not Did you not have a GTA Online character already?
Yeah, I did, but I have no attachment, and I don't think anything worthwhile was done to that character. If memory serves, I made her really ugly. It was one of those things, you know what I mean? Where it's just like, I'm gonna screw around with this character, so I have no attachment. I don't have any real money invested in it and stuff like that. So this whole, we don't have it in front of me right now or whatever, but like this time around, you can start. There's like an actual onboarding. They give you $4 million, I think. That you get a job right away. There's all these different things. I'd rather come in and get that experience than come in and be like, oh, well, I'm attached to this character that means nothing to me, and I want to figure that out. No. We're starting fresh here. All right, brand new.
I took some days off last week, and like I wasn't on KFGD most of the days, and so I missed like what the GTA news was because I know they had another PR blast for what the updates like. Janet, on Friday's KFGD, did they talk about what like any of the onboarding process? Because I know they're doing that, right? I know they're jumpstarting you. Are they jumpstarting you in terms of level also? Do you remember them saying anything like that?
I don't remember them mentioning level specifically. It was more like money in order to get like vehicles, buildings, and then there'd be a new tutorial. They've also done some like UI tweaks as well. So that's kind of the extent of the onboarding. I'm joining the press release already in progress here that we got last week and talked about on it. And new players might need more than just a pistol in their belt to survive Los Santos. So we're introducing a new career builder feature designed expressly for new players or anyone who wants to reset their character and get a fresh start to get an introductory leg up in the criminal world of Southern San Andreas. With this system, you get $4 million of GTA money to select essentials, including business properties, vehicles, and weapons. Furthermore, GTA Online for PS5 and Xbox Series X/S, nobody cares about that here, has an assortment of new quality of life improvements, including a newly designed introduction and tutorial for new players, a new front-end main menu that allows you to jump directly into free mode, heists, races, adversary modes, the latest feature, weekly event content, and more. So that's what it's talking about for new players there. Bless.
Okay. I think we can figure something out.
Okay. Good.
I'm going to sit on it and ponder about it.
Okay.
I'm going to come with a plan.
I like that. I remember everybody, like I said, Kotaku, no longer striking. Zach Zawisen will be here next week to hang out with us and talk about it. So if you have GTA Online starter questions or if you have GTA Online advice, make sure you send it over to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames to be part of the show. Speaking of which, like I already told you, you get all the different benefits for this show, but you definitely want that Gamescast benefit as well. So you can watch us record the show live tomorrow, Tuesday afternoon, 3:15 p.m. Pacific time. Of course, get Gamescast ad-free. Get it with the post show that often has Bless Who that I always win at. You can also be like our Patreon producers, Gordon McGuire, Fargo Brady, Pranksky, Dan, a.k.a. Golden Spider B, Tyler Ross, Delaney Twinning, First Responder ND, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, James Hastings, and Casey Andrew. Today we're brought to you by Upstart, ExpressVPN, Chime, and Babbel. But for now, let's start the show with topic of the show. Now in the live chat, Ryan Pawala Higgins does say, will Janet redeem it on PlayStation Plus?
Oh, GTA?
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't I also have to? I still have to buy the game also.
If
I mean,
you
I
stick
don't need
around,
to play it, but
yeah.
I mean, if you're just
Yeah.
doing online, I don't think you'll need to buy it.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
free.
but I'm going to because I don't have it. Like, I don't own GTA 5.
Also, yeah, Bustin', you ever hear this? Janet's never played GTA 5.
Oh yeah, I heard this a while ago. It shocked me,
Yeah.
but
We're
Yeah, it
used
is
to it
what-
with her.
But
You
now
know what I
you're
mean?
numb
Yeah.
to all surprises.
Lady, gentlemen, we start with this topic of the show. Has the PlayStation Game of the Year already been decided? As we record this, it is March 7th, 2022. Last year, and I guess it's easier to go, a few months ago, we came down to Game of the Year here, KindaFunny. We all got into the room. We all started yelling at each other on a podcast. We all cast our ballots. Barrett came down. Ratchet & Clank won. It surprised us all. Ratchet & Clank won because it was on it was on everyone's list, right, Barrett? Or was it shy of one?
Correct. It was the only game on everybody's list who voted.
And so, a lot of people had these things they loved a lot, very at the top of the list, but then other people didn't play them, so they were at the back of the list. So then it just balanced out that Ratchet & Clank was able to come in there, and justifiably so, as a game we love and win our Game of the Year. But the question now becomes, for us here talking, has the PlayStation Game of the Year already been decided? Of course, we are addressing the elephant in the room, Elden Ring. Blessing, Janet and I, we sit there on our porch sipping our coffee and watch you kids in the yard play your Elden Ring, talking about your orcs and your maidenlessness, and we're like, have a great time, kids. We're glad you're having a great time. Where are you with Elden Ring right now? As the man who was on the review, who infamously gave it a 4 out of 5, you said for where you're at, and said you could see it maybe going up in your opinion.
Yeah, so that review was like a week ago, maybe a week or so ago. And during that, I was about 25 hours in, and I think I was out of the three of us that I played it, Tam, me, Andy, I was very much like on the dissenting side, and the dissenting side being like at the time I was 4 out of 5. So I was calling it great, but I was like, I don't know if this is masterpiece level for me yet. Now I'm closer to 70 hours into the game, and I fucking love it, right? Where I can't get enough of it. The more I play it, it's one of those games where it just continues to open up and you're finding more shit. And I don't know if you've been on any of the podcasts where you've talked to anybody who's been playing Elden Ring. So I don't know if you've had it explained to you how fucking magical this game is, but it just keeps going and going and going in terms of shit that you're finding, boss battles that you encounter, the level of vastness and depth that the world continues to show, where it is oh, certainly I'm pushing up against the boundaries, right? Certainly I'm about to have all my map uncovered, and then you find another map and it's oh shit, okay, this just keeps going. And then you go underground and you're like, oh, this keeps going. And then you go in the sky and you're like, what the fuck? This game just keeps going, right? It's that kind of everlasting gobstopper experience that is filled with a lot of really good quality combat, because it's from software and combat is their jam. It's filled with really cool art design, really amazing presentation, and the amount of dope ass vistas and cool views and cool things there are to discover, where you'll turn a corner and you'll see a fucking skull on the side of the mountain and shit like that, where it's damn, this game is absolutely stunning to look at. But then it also just has that from software method of story and lore, where it isn't a front-facing narrative. It isn't like Horizon style or traditional game narrative, where there's the main character who you're following who is talking at you. There's not traditional side quests in a way. It's very much experiential in terms of you are the Tarnished, you're your own character, right? You start from scratch and you are talking to characters in the world who just kind of they've already experienced shit, right? They're already
they've already seen some shit.
They've already seen some shit, and you talk to somebody, they might put you on a quest, but there's not really a pop-up that tells you you're on a quest. It is more so almost like a puzzle kind of situation of okay, this person wants me to go here to talk to this guy. Let me just go follow this direction, right? This girl wants me to go to this castle that's south. Let me go explore that castle, see what I find, and see if I can deliver the letter that she wants me to deliver. And then you get there and you discover another thing along that line. You're like, oh shit, okay, now I'm in a boss fight with a werewolf. And you finish it and you're like, okay, cool. Let me find the person that she originally wanted me to talk to, right? It's those very in the moment, what's the word I'm looking for? Things that happen as you go type of thing. And the more I played it, the more I've just loved it, to the point where I'd be shocked if we get to the end of the year and this isn't a clear winner for Game of the Year.
Do you think it's your favorite game of all time?
No. It's definitely in the list of top maybe my 20 favorite games, right? I think it's when I'm comparing it against other From Software games, it's funny because I have an argument for all the From Software games that I've played now for which one is my favorite one, because it is between Elden Ring, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, which are the ones that I got super into, right? Sekiro, I think, still has the best combat and the most fun combat, and I think it's the most approachable in terms of gameplay, and I think I think that goes a long way. Bloodborne, I think, also has more fun combat than Elden Ring, and I really like the lore of Bloodborne. I like the story, I like the world, I like the style. I think Bloodborne is just so dope in that stuff. And then Elden Ring, I think, does have the thing of it's an open world game, and what it does for From Software and like open world design generally for open world, I think is special. Where it is so explorative, it is so go whatever direction you want. Like happen upon a really cool point of interest that then sends you down on a journey, find a cave, find a whatever, right? Like, when you ask, is it my favorite game of all time? I put it up against Breath of the Wild, which is funny because like I think the games are so similar and very different in terms of both of them have the same design ethos of step out into the open world and go whatever direction you want. It feels very original Legend of Zelda, where you get on that first starting screen, it can kind of go whatever direction. Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild both have that. And I love both these games, I think, for that exact reason. But I've been talking to people recently about how, Breath of the Wild, even though it's my favorite game, I really hope that like people on that team play Elden Ring and go, okay, we can do X, Y, and Z thing from Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild.
So Breath of the Wild 2 is definitely not coming out.
Yeah, I need that game sooner than that, bless.
Dude, I'm not to remake this whole game.
Here's my thing too. Like we're in this Game of the Year conversation, and this is like I don't want to shift too far away from PlayStation, but Breath of the Wild, again, favorite game of all time. If Breath of the Wild 2 comes out this year, I think Game of the Year still is going to be easily on the side of Elden Ring. Just for how... I'll go for it.
To what degree do you distinguish your favorite game from the best game you've played? Or do you not? Is there no distinguishing line for you?
I think it's for how much of a thing is my jam versus how much of a thing is like quality, and from a critical lens, I'm like, this is great. And Breath of the Wild for me hits both, where Breath of the Wild is one, my jam, right? I know it's not like everybody's jam. I know plenty of people have issues with it, whatever, right? It is completely my jam in terms of like, I love the art style. I like Zelda. I love like that Nintendo game design ethos, right? And I like what Breath of the Wild does for open world. And like when I get into quality, right, that's where I get into, which is, how it goes about making you explore and play around with its physics systems and like being able to climb anywhere and all that stuff. I think all that stuff makes Breath of the Wild special. Elden Ring is also my jam because I like these From Software games, and it's also a game that has an extreme amount of quality. And I think, to Greg's question, if you ask me in a year or so, is this my favorite game of all time? I think then maybe it might be more of a, maybe it might be in there. I think even for Breath of the Wild, it took me like a year or so before I was like, damn, I just fucking love this game. Like a year later, I can't stop thinking about this game. And the way that like Persona 4 Golden, years later, I was still thinking about that game, right? For me, that's what it takes for something to be up there like that. Elden Ring, I can see having that potential, right? I think it really is that good.
Is there a game that you think is at or above the level of Elden Ring that wouldn't be on that favorites list? Like, is it basically synonymous then at that point for the most part?
What do you mean in terms of like quality?
Yeah, like you're like, oh, Elden Ring's competitive for favorite game of all time. Currently, it's still Breath of the Wild for you. Like, are they also the best games you've played? Like, just from a more critical standpoint? Obviously, it gets messy because you can't ever fully divorce like a critical lens versus like a personal taste thing. Because I think we've developed our ability to engage in criticism through the lens of who we are personally,
of what we like and like what we gravitate toward.
And that develops over time, and obviously we can like sort of shift as needed. But yeah, is this also one of the best games of all time that you've ever played?
That's a deep question. Maybe.
Janet comes with the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah. Rewinding a little bit to your point of like games hitting people in different ways because of preference, and like you're bringing in whatever you're into when you analyze something and talk about it. I think like it's funny because like if I ask Greg right now, right, like what's Greg's game of the year, I'm sure Greg's answer will be Horizon, and I'm sure if Greg played Elden Ring,
do you want to stop being a fucking coward and ask me the question?
If Greg played Elden Ring, I think the answer will still be. Is the answer not Horizon?
Let's not derail the conversation. We're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah. Like if Greg played Elden Ring, I think
Greg asked you a question and then said, "I'm not going to answer the question." Like,
right? Like
Janet, I'm looking out for the podcast. All right, I'm looking out for the podcast.
Expert deflector.
He's making a point. I didn't want to stop the point.
When you reverse it, and then the other person re-reverses it, and you're just reversing back and forth. It's like, what are we doing? And like, when is the other person gonna play?
But if Greg were to play Elden Ring, I think Greg's answer would still be Horizon, because Horizon leans into the type of open world that Greg loves to play, right? Like, I think Greg would probably criticize the like directionlessness and like the how unapproachable Elden Ring can be to new players and all that stuff. And like, I think Greg would look at Horizon and go, look how beautiful this game is. I love the character of Aloy, right? I love what they're doing for story. I like the laid back nature of like, going through the activities list and having all these things that's like a menu of shit that I can do.
For sure.
Right. There's been a back and forth on like Twitter lately of people going like, oh, like look at Ubisoft games, all these icons, all these menus and things, right? And people being like, oh, look at Elden Ring, it just lets you go. And I'm like, these games are for different people. Like, these are different genres basically, right? Like, I don't think one makes the other bad. But
I appreciate the one chime in today on that thread where it was, I think Jason, our friend, Jason Schreier from Bloomberg, put up the image that was all the shit all over the screen. And so like somebody quote tweeted, it was like, for years you've been able to turn this shit off in Assassin's Creed. Like, you can tailor the experience to be how you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I feel like we start to, it gets to a point of like, what are we talking about when we do start to compare these things so strongly against each other and talk about which one is better and which one is not, when these experiences are so designed to be different. And, Horizon doesn't want to be Elden Ring. Horizon doesn't want to be Breath of the Wild. But to go back to like finally get to Janet's question of like, do I think it's one of the best games of all time? When I measure that, I measure like how impactful a game is and how much it does for the genre. And I think Elden Ring does a lot for the genre in terms of the Breath of the Wild thing of go whatever direction, right? The original Legend of Zelda thing of go any direction, but then also the amount of quality and the amount of like the amount of designed stuff in the game, right? I think a big critique that people, and me included, have for Breath of the Wild is that like, once you start going down that rigmarole of all the shrines, some of these shrines are copy and paste, right? You get to a shrine and it's like, oh yeah, it's a blessing of, I forget what they're called, but it's a blessing shrine essentially where nothing is in there. The puzzle was getting to the shrine. You get to the combat shrines and it's like, cool, I'm fighting the same robot here again, right? And like, sure. I don't think it's a huge deal, but it is a critique, right? And it's a critique that Elden Ring gets around, because in Elden Ring you have the catacombs, you have the caves, you have the castles, and all of them feel so thought out. All of them feel like you're going on your own on a new adventure, right? All of them feel so well designed. Yeah, it never feels copy and paste, right? And I think that goes such a long way, right? And like, I don't want to like keep comparing and contrasting these two games, but like, that's not to take away from Breath of the Wild, because I do think like the physics system is so magical still in that game, and that game still does so many things. But I think when you're talking about quality, again, I'm talking about like, what does Elden Ring do that pushes the limits? And I think Elden Ring does a lot. And so to that extent, I'd say yeah, like, I put Elden Ring in that story of, for me, when I first started playing open world games, and for me, the first one I played was like GTA, right? It was GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. And San Andreas was the one that opened my eyes to, fuck, man, this is 3 cities, this is a desert, this is a mountain. Like, this game has everything. This is an open world game that feels so vast, right? And for me, after that was Fallout 3, which was my first Bethesda RPG. And I was like, wow.
You're like, man, everything's brown. I can go any direction and it's brown.
I was like, yo, this is even more vast, right? Like, I can talk to all these characters, I can have adventures, I can go on quests and shit. And then after that, for me, probably was, I think it was GTA 5 actually. And then after that, again, it was Witcher 3, and then Breath of the Wild. And I think Elden Ring is the next step in that evolution of like, damn, this is what games can do. And the fact that I feel like I'm having those moments where I'm like, damn, this is what games can do, I think puts Elden Ring for sure in that conversation.
Blessing, I'm going to bring you over to patreon.com/kindafunnygames, where Keith wrote in and said this: Elden Ring reviews have me thinking a lot about review scores and reviews generally. Elden Ring is scoring 10s/masterpieces and being lauded by reviewers all over the internet. But do FromSoft games present a unique split between reviewers and more casual gamers? As someone who gave Bloodborne the college try 3 times, even getting past the part where the world changes, I just did not find it enjoyable. As someone who gets maybe a couple hours every week, getting beat down for 90% of that time, only to pick up a day or two later and rinse and repeat, was not that fun for me. I just didn't have time to, quote, get good. Because of my time with Bloodborne, I know Elden Ring is not for me. But I imagine there are folks picking up Elden Ring who are pretty casually playing games due to reviews, who aren't actually being forewarned about what they are in for. Is this an issue? And further, is it fixable? Blessing, Adeoye Jr.
So I'll start off with this, and I want to pass the ball to Barrett, because I know Barrett's been playing Elden Ring, and Barrett's not historically a big from software person. So I think Barrett could probably even answer this question better. But like, this was one of my big critiques during the review, is that like, the game doesn't tutorialize things a lot of the time that feel like they should be tutorialized. You know, like it's a game, and I had this with Bloodborne, and this is one of the reasons why I love Bloodborne, is that the game is so shrouded in mystery and discovery, and that then reaches back to the mechanics where, you know, you'll find out that you can do a certain move, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't realize I could do that. And I think there's something cool about that discovery of like, oh damn, this mechanic was here the whole time. Oh man, it's so cool that I can do this now, and you feel like you're growing as a player. Like I had that today where there's this maneuver in Elden Ring, and I think it was in Dark Souls 2, it wasn't in Bloodborne or Sekiro, called power stancing. And what that means is that you have two of the same offensive weapon. And so I have two katanas with my character because I'm a samurai, and I just found a new blood katana that I love so much. And so I decided to respec my character so that I can hold both these katanas. When I was playing around with it, I think it was this morning, you know, I did like a combo with it, right? Where I tapped L1 and I did a combo I'd never seen before, where it was like me using both swords and getting hits in with both swords, which is huge because both my swords are spec differently, right? Like one does more blood damage, one is like spec for arcane, right? The other is a pure strength sword. And so getting hits with both swords was like valuable in a way that was meaningful for my specific character build. But like learning that maneuver, I was like, oh shit. And then I tweeted it out and people were like, oh yeah, that's power stancing. Like, you know, they had that in Dark Souls 2. And that was the thing that I'd never heard of. And making that discovery for me was such a special moment because I was like, fuck man, this opens up a whole new world for me. That said, like that was a thing that existed in a previous From Software game. And so like, is that a thing that I should have discovered in that way? Or was that a thing that maybe they should have clued me into? Because obviously like if you played a Souls game before, you would have known about this, right? Or if you played Dark Souls 2, you would have known about this. You know, it's like, it's a bit of a double-edged thing because I think there is a satisfaction in how non-handholdy it is. And I think that's part of why people like From Software games is that they're just like, get lost in it and figure it out. And figuring it out feels fun for so many people. But then you get on the other hand where I find it tough to recommend Souls games a lot of the time, right? Or From Software games because there is such a barrier to entry and it is a struggle sometimes. And like Elden Ring specifically, I think it being open world and feeling like a game that wants to be more approachable for a From Software game, I think there are very basic things that could be explained better that they have like small box pop-ups for in terms of like, this is how you two-hand your weapon, this is how you do X, Y, and Z thing. But it doesn't really teach you. It tells you for like half a second in a game that is so vast and 70 hours long, and then that box goes away, and then you like are basically out to fend for yourself, and it doesn't tutorialize in the way that like we always reference Super Mario Brothers. You know, you like hit that first block, and like, you know, it's designed so that you know to jump over the Goomba or whatever, right? Like Elden Ring doesn't do that. They don't make you go through the motions of like using all these different mechanics. Partly because like I'm sure that would take a lot of effort and like waste a lot of time in terms of like a tutorial area, but also I think I also think it's needed. It's that tough thing to balance. But Barry, I want to hear from you. Like as somebody who's into Elden Ring, do you feel like it could be tutorialized better or be more friendly to new players?
100%, and I don't think I'd be enjoying it as much to the point where like I'm playing it in the background while running this show because I want to like farm for runes and like grind out. And you know, I started this morning at level 55 and I'm about to hit like level 70 in like just a few hours, which is dope as hell. I don't think I'd be enjoying it as much of like if I didn't have people like Andy who would be like, oh yeah, like go back to the first church next to the really scary dude who is probably the first person you fight in the game when you go into the open world.
Yeah, Tree Sentinel.
Yeah, and like go get your summons because like for the longest time I was like, man, I could have sworn like Andy had some wolf friends in this game and that looks really fucking cool and I couldn't figure out how to get these wolf friends. And then the solution was like, oh yeah, go to this building that's right next to the dude who's gonna like eat your lunch if you get near him. And I was like, huh, okay. Like I definitely agree with you. It's just like, yeah, there are definitely tutorialization things.
I had the same thing where like 20 hours past that, like 30 hours in, you know, like I was playing on stream and I bring up my menu and Andy's like, you don't have item crafting? And I was like, you have item crafting? Because I've been looking at this grayed out menu item the whole time, right? And like this is pre-release, and so I don't have guides, I don't have shit to look up. But I also don't think that people should be forced to use guides. But I didn't have that. And like Andy was like, oh yeah, you talked to the guy that was near the Tree Sentinel. And I was like, Andy, you were on the Let's Play with me. Why didn't you direct me to this guy? Because like, you know, I think people when a game says go wherever you want right out the gate when you open the door, you should be able to do that, right? And not miss out on key features.
Yeah, and so I definitely think my like vision of it and my enjoyment of it is because I've had like conversations with Andy here and there where I had to text him yesterday and be like, hey, are talismans like one-time use? He's like, nah, just equip those. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm 30 hours into the game and I just learned that. And
But
so,
isn't this all wrapped up in what the allure of this game is and
that's
why it stands out? Like, I feel like
100%.
the lack of hand holding I always compare it back to being on the playground and talking to your friends about the game you're all playing, right, and finding some secrets seems to be the draw.
And that's like it invokes the original Legend of Zelda more so than I think Breath of the Wild in and of itself does, even though like Breath of the Wild is them trying to do this like OG Legend of Zelda in a 3D space. 100%. And like, even though, I've been listening to so many podcasts, so I'm sorry. I'm trying to quote someone who said this, but I've listened to like 500 podcasts in the last week while playing Elden Ring, because it's my like podcast game now. And so it was one of those things where like, yeah, it's tough, and like maybe some of the boss fights, like the major boss fights themselves might be a little tougher than like other things, but then like the ability to have the open world and like not bash your head into a wall for 5 hours and like go do something else in another direction, and like having that be a little more open to new players, which is like why I think the game grabbed me so much, where it's like, oh, I'm terrible with Margit right now. Cool. I'm just gonna go explore the world and like level, like, come back 10 levels later and kick Margit's butt in like three tries and stuff like that. Whereas in like other Souls games, it's like you got to go through one corridor over and over again to be able to like do that kind of level grindy kind of thing, right? And so it's there was one other point that I wanted to talk about. Oh, like, even though it is very daunting, and it can be kind of a, I'm a Souls player and I'm playing this by myself, like, it is very encouraging about playing with others and talking with others and stuff like that, like the schoolyard conversation. But also the amount of just like summoning I've done of like, yeah, you know what, Regala is like kicking my butt, let me like summon a friend, like a random person here to help me out with this fight that I've been struggling with for like the last couple hours, and that friend helps me take her out in one try. And it, like, I don't think that lessens the experience for me personally. It's like really dope to like have those resources to like summon other people who are playing, summon my wolf buddies, summon my big boy
my wolf buddies in here.
Yeah, my wolf buddies, my big boy with a bow, which is really dope and has been really helpful. It's just like, yeah, I think there are a lot of aspects of the game that I think like when they were talking about like, oh, this is going to be like kind of like the easiest Souls game or whatever, I think it was those aspects that they were specifically referencing to, of like how encouraging that the game is trying to get you to like have help from others, whether it's NPCs or actual other players alike, right? But I do agree, like, it is still very FromSoft and just like how obtuse it is. And I think just because I tried other Souls games before, I knew what to get into. So it is like a weird thing of, maybe because I knew what I was getting into this time around, I was a little more open to it. Whereas like before this, the most I'd put in a Souls game was Demon Souls, and I put like 5 hours. I'm 30 hours into this game, which I did not think I'd be at this point, but here we are.
So again, the question is for this episode: has the PlayStation Game of the Year already been decided? That's what I asked the audience, and Kebabs wrote in and said this: yes, it's Elden Ring, and it's so obvious given how people are talking about it right now. The last time the discussion was this high was when Breath of the Wild came out. We're going to be hearing about Elden Ring for a long, long time, especially given it's an open world that Tam's going to be playing for months. Now, that's obviously, I think, encapsulating a little bit of what Barrett and Bless have said so far, mainly Bless. But I like this response here from Benji Bop in the kind of funny mailbag here for PS I Love You XOXO, right? Not to get too deep, but I genuinely believe that the cards are normally stacked against games that release early in the year when it comes to Game of the Year discussion. Last year alone, we saw Hitman 3 get a lot less love by November/December. I also thought Returnal was a better time loop game than Deathloop was. I think recency bias can play a factor in these decisions, whether subconsciously or not, and it takes a truly groundbreaking experience to stand out and maintain momentum for 9 to 12 months. Janet Garcia, do you think it's just recency bias right now with Elden Ring, or is it something special?
No, I mean, I think it's something special. Like, I have not seen, again, to echo what Kebabs mentioned, like virality at this level in what feels like ages. Even the games that have gotten a lot of love from like last year and the previous years, like I see a bunch of stuff that frankly I don't know what the hell I'm even seeing. They're like, oh, if you don't want spoilers, I'm like, I wouldn't know what I don't know what this is. I may never even see this. So it's,
I was gonna say,
even if I play through it,
you have to play 110 hours to get to this one fight, spoiler fight.
Like
I
you'll
think
see
you're
this
okay.
one tree, like, oh, okay, like it's fine. Yeah, there's a lot of love here, and I think what this has more so going against it, in my opinion, it's not when it came out, it's like the type of game that it is. You know, Elden Ring, like that genre is not, doesn't have the mass appeal that, like, if we think too of, you know, interesting the conversation of like PlayStation Game of the Year or Game of the Year, it's like, what do we mean by that? Do we mean like our personal Game of the Year? Do we mean PS I Love You Game of the Year? Do we mean KindaFunny? Do we mean like the industry? Do we mean Keeley's Game Awards? Like, I think one of the reasons like at, you know, Game Awards that It Takes Two one is because it's a game that everyone played. Versus like, but I think Elden Ring's so powerful that it doesn't matter that not everyone played it. Like, you know, this person writing in mentioned Returnal. I think Returnal was that like perfect unfortunate storm of being like niche enough, but then also early, but then like there's plenty of reasons why that maybe didn't get more love than, you know, something like Elden Ring will get. But yeah, I just think that Elden Ring had hype and love before it even came out. Like, everyone was obsessed with that game before it came out, and then it came out, everyone's like, yeah, this is awesome, I love it, it's everything I wanted and more. And like, sure, there are like, yeah, there are criticisms of it, but like, I mean, what is it, the highest Metacritic or Open Critic rated game of history? Like, yeah, I think that's probably pretty much, I don't think people are going to forget that the most highest rated game came out this year just because it came out a few months early. Like, I think when you're big enough, it doesn't really matter.
And I think like I think we overstate the recency thing a lot, because when you look at the last like 5 to 7 years of like Game of the Year conversation, I think more often than not you're looking at things that came out a bit earlier in the year. Because like I'm trying to think of earlier years. Like God of War came out in spring when that came out, right? Breath of the Wild came out, and Horizon in 2017 both came out in like February, March.
Yeah.
Hitman 3 came out in January, and like, you know, it got forgotten by the end of the year. But did it get forgotten, or was it not going to be talked about anyway? Because like Hitman,
I think that's the bigger thing.
Exactly. And It Takes Two came out in March also.
Which I do think leads to your question from earlier for me. And of course, you know, it hasn't already been decided. We're talking about Elden Ring right now at 97 on Metacritic, right? I broke up things here. I said, what's on the board already for this year, right? Right behind it, obviously, for us on the show is Horizon Forbidden West. And you said, Bless, you know, if you were to ask me, what's my game of the year so far, right? Like, this is where I got into trouble last year with some audience members when I was like, oh, like at this point so far, Returnal. And it was like, how can you say Returnal's your game of the year when you haven't even finished it at that point? I was like, well, again, I wasn't saying it's my end game of the year. I'm saying, yeah, right now it's game of the year, sure. And so, yeah, right now for me, I would say it's Horizon Forbidden West. But I don't think Horizon Forbidden West is going to be my game of the year when all is said and done. I think when we get to December or January and we cast ballots and we're talking about it, I think that Horizon won't be at the top of my list. I think Horizon's a great game. You know what I mean?
What do you think is going to overtake it?
I don't know, but it's that thing where I think it's got an interesting problem. I'm going to read from the only Jeffy Grub, who wrote in to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, just like you can, when I said, did we already decide PlayStation Game of the Year? He says, because Horizon and God of War are going to have to deal with a lot of, quote, they're great, I love them, but they're more of what we already played, end quote. I think this is a slight problem for PlayStation. It's going to get diminishing returns fast. If God of War 3 is more of this style, it's probably also going to lead to some folks asking what's next. And I don't know how much Sony can make those games feel much larger without spending a significant amount of extra money. I feel like that argument is what hurts for Forbidden West for a while, where I loved Forbidden West. I had a great time with Forbidden West. We're still in review season, even though it's not all Elden Rings and Horizons right now. But when I do get a gap in my schedule, I'm going back to Forbidden West to polish off the platinum and do that stuff. But even though I sit there and I say, I think it's a 5 out of 5 experience for Forbidden West, I don't sit there and go, that was a groundbreaking, earth-changing, slam dunk game of the year. I'll go to the mat to fight for it kind of thing. And it's funny because, you know, on Gamescast, when we did predictions for this year, for 2022 gaming, I said that I predicted either Elden Ring would be KindaFunny's game of the year when it was all said and done, or Elden Ring would be a bomb. Like, I don't think there's an in between. And I think that's what you're running into. I think we're running towards. And I think even for the PlayStation game of the year, which we'll have a conversation about here in a second, like, it's the same kind of argument of like, I think Elden Ring and then you want to put on, your critic's hat and try to be as objective as you can and be a student of the video game industry and all that stuff, right? And kind of jump off of, Benji Bop's thing here of, recency bias or this, that, the other. Keith's question talking about like, he didn't like Bloodborne, so this game's clearly not for him. Like, I liked Bloodborne fine. I didn't think it was amazing. When I put it down, I didn't want to come back to it. Elden Ring, I played for an hour. I'm sorry. I played Elden Ring, for that hour and a half in between the two reviews I was working on. And it was the same thing where I put it down. I'm like, this is a From Software game. I get it. I know why people love that. It's just not what I love about it. And so I'm not going to probably be, I need to give it a better shake than that when I'm not in between two things for work. But when that'll ever happen again, I don't know. Because like, I know we're a PlayStation podcast, but like I had a free evening the other day where I was waiting for the WWE review code. And so I wasn't like ready to start something else. And I didn't want to come down here and work on what I'm playing Redacted on my PC. And so I was like, oh, you know what? Let's do it. Let's get up Triangle Strategy on Switch. And I booted that up, right? And like, I played that, and the hour and a half I played of that, I was like, I want to get back to that as soon as possible. That's just a personal preference. That's a personal taste thing when I'm talking about Elden Ring versus Triangle Strategy, right? But I would never sit here and be like, because I don't connect with Elden Ring, I look at it and I say it's not Game of the Year. Like, we are living such a moment right now that is so rare to see people celebrating this game and talking about this game and tweeting about this game. And granted, there are definitely times where I open Twitter and I immediately close Twitter. I'm like, all it is right now is boss fight videos and like, you're using two cool blades and Patrick Klepek nerding out with you about it. I love seeing that, and I wish I cared about it. I wish I wanted to get invested in that. I don't, but I can sit there and see why that game's special and why I think right now, objectively, it's Game of the Year.
Yeah.
It's not what I would cast my ballot for, but I would never sit there and like die on this hill that Horizon is clearly Game of the Year, not Elden Ring. Like, no way I'd step up and say that.
Yeah, it's a game that's having a moment too, right? Like we were talking about From Software. Not only is it a From Software game, it's a From Software game that is breaking the barriers of people that are usually even not into From Software games all the time. Like seeing the concurrent Steam players be in like the 900,000s, right? And seeing the sales seemingly be off the chain. I think there was a report saying, not a report, but like, I think there was like people online talking about how, looking at sales, it seems like it might be the best-selling new IP since Destiny, and like that's ridiculous, right? When you're talking about it in those instances. But like, I also scroll through TikTok, and I think partly because of the way the FYP works, right? The TikTok algorithm works. My TikTok algorithm is filled with Elden Ring videos. But I'm also looking at the likes, and these things are getting a lot of likes. Like Elden Ring videos are popping off right now on TikTok, and that is kind of my judgment for like what is just the regular person talking
mainstream.
about. Yeah, what is the mainstream talking about? And people are talking about Elden Ring, right? Like Elden Ring is selling. Elden Ring is probably going to be one of the best selling games of the year if I had to put money on it. And that's wild for something that is From Software, something that's a new IP, something that feels like it's niche, but seems like it's not going to be niche after this game, right? Like I think this is going to
is their breakout.
Yeah, the breakout of like, no, this is now something that you're putting alongside the biggest games of the year. Regularly.
I think I still kind of consider it a niche, but it's a niche in the way Monster Hunter's a niche, where it's like, I mean, obviously I think Elden Ring has way more virality than Monster Hunter, just from my experience, like on social media and walking around and in space and time. I'm not trying to like compare numbers or critical acclaim or anything like that. Like when those games drop, I personally don't see them as much on my feed. Again, could just be who I'm following, whatever. But I think with Elden Ring too, like you're seeing, like when I go like to stream on Twitch, like, and I streamed the first 4 hours of like my time with it. And when I did, like everyone's that I follow is playing it. Everyone's playing, and whatever in general too, like for Souls games, I think there's just a really big and passionate community that enjoys watching them, supporting them, and seeing someone else like play through them. Like when I did Demon Souls last year, which was like, not hot off of it, just barely releasing on PS5, though that version wasn't that old at the time. I had like way bigger numbers. Like I always have way bigger numbers when I stream those games because people like watching them and they like, and I do backseat on for all my streams anyway. So like people are like, oh cool, like let me know. Like I'll if you want to summon me in, I'd love to help. Have you gotten this? Do you want this? There's so much. While there is a sector of the community that is like maybe like head ass about the difficulty and it's like if you change anything, if anything changes, like it's not the truest art except for when the developers change it, and then I'm okay with it. Like it's sure that sector exists, but honestly, from like casually engaging with these games and playing through Demon Souls, I never experienced any of that. I only experienced people that were really passionate about their little nerdy thing that they somehow knew a lot of shit about. It's a very like lore heavy, menus reading, item description. Like it's such a meaty game.
Is it? I like what do we mean when we say niche? Because I feel like in the way that like we call Elden Ring niche, like is it because of like the soulsiness of it? Because like is Dying Light 2 niche? Because I don't think Dying Light 2 is going to sell as much as Elden Ring.
It's like it's not for a cat. It's
like,
kind of like
genre.
Like we're all just want to go right. Like I would say like so. It's a very interesting question, and there's a million different ways to tackle it. I would think it's niche because you bring up Dying Light 2, right? I think Dying Light 2 isn't niche. Granted, it won't sell as much as Elden Ring, but it isn't niche because you can say, oh, it's a zombie game. Oh, it's a first-person, not shooter, but parkour or whatever you want to call it. It's zombies. It's an open-world zombie game.
Enough to
and I think people wrap their heads around that. Whereas, like, when you're like, what is Elden Ring? You're like, oh, it's this giant open world. This dude smashed a ring. It's all over there. You're tarnished, and there's maidens. And
I feel like in terms of genre, right, and in terms of pitch, like Elden Ring is just Skyrim. You know, it's a big action RPG, like an open world action RPG.
Oh, cool. So I'm going to walk up to talk to people, and they're going to give me quests, and there's dialogue choices?
I mean, there's not dialogue choices, but yeah, you're going to walk up to people, and they're going to give you quests. Actually, there are sometimes dialogue choices.
But not like it is. Like, Skyrim is so much about talking to people, though, right?
Yeah.
Genres inherently are narrowing down things further. Like, I think once you go from video games to platformer to visual novel to whatever, it's inherently going to be like a smaller section because you're like narrowing it down to a specific genre. What I categorize as niche in the case, though this isn't that important of a conversation in terms of moving forward, what we think of the game or how the game is received or anything like that, but I consider it the people who only buy 1 or 2 games a year, the likelihood of them buying this game and like how casual it is and how simple the mechanics are. Like I think platformers had their heyday of crazy popularity, so I don't really consider that to be a niche genre because it's like one of the most classic ways people understand what a video game is.
Sure.
I consider like visual novels and like FMV games to be more niche, not only in so much the selling or whatever, but I'm like it's not what people really think about when they think of what a game is, and that's not to say like to draw some weird line on what is a game or what isn't a game, but I just think it's more specific and has more complex systems. It's less able to be picked up, and on that regard, like it's just if you're again without trying to add like a negative connotation to it, it's a little it's not basic enough to not be niche in my opinion, and that's how I feel about with Horizon, where like I love Horizon, that's currently my game of the year, but similar to Greg, even though I give that a 5 out of 5, I'm not going to square up against Elden Ring because well, one, I don't have the critical lens to really have that, in my opinion, meaningful of a conversation about that game at scale. Like, I think I can have meaningful input. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, my voice or opinion is worthless on the topic. But I think if it's like sitting in a room with like you, Blessing, talking about the game, I don't think that conversation, I think you'd have a better conversation with someone that with Barrett or somebody who understood more of the appeal and the intrigue and all those layers. So that's why I consider it to be a really popular niche.
When we talk about like the complication of it, like I still don't see Elden Ring as being more complicated than something like a Skyrim or Breath of the Wild in terms of like systems, the amount of things going on. I think it's harder, right? I think the combat is more difficult, but I don't think like in terms of the layers there that you have to interact with, like it's just like it's an RPG, right? It's stats, like your swords have stats to them.
I think obviously,
but like other games.
But this is where it comes in a niche too, I think, right? Where it's like, at least where I would come in and start not arguing, but like trying to make my case for this is that, yeah, all the systems are there to be a traditional RPG, but I feel like they're all just, here they are.
Yeah.
Whereas like Skyrim or Dying Light 2, and not that I'm at all arguing Dying Light 2 is a better game. That's not the argument I'm making. Don't try to misconstrue. No, not you. The people on Twitter the next day where I get all these tweets about it. But like, you look at a visually pleasing menu, your eyes are drawn to something. I feel like it's meant to be. Whereas like in Elden Ring, right, you go to the fire and you sit down and you add the little +1 to whatever you're doing. It's the same thing. You're doing the same thing, but I feel like it's like one is very much like trying not to make it easy, but to usher you through the process, to make that part of the fun, to make that thing.
I think too, there's like this weird like disconnect that exists in games like Elden Ring, where, and a couple of the writers kind of spoke to this with like, oh, well, if people don't like it, and they hear it's good, they might not like it, even though it's like supposed to be like one of the greatest games of all time. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but that's kind of where I like couch it is. That's what makes it niche to me. The fact that it can be a masterpiece and it's very easy to just not like it because it's a little. It kind of keeps you at arm's length, I think, is the thing for me. Like all of these games, even with me like enjoying Demon Souls, like I have no idea what I critically really think of that game at a more interesting or in-depth level, the way I can talk about Dying Light 2, Horizon, all these other titles, because I'm like, well, I had fun, but like, was the game good? And that's not me saying Demon Souls isn't a good game, but I'm like, was it, I'm like, well, I had fun because like
do I have the tools to critique this thing? Because
yeah, like, and I don't, because it's so like, I don't know what I'm even, it's just such a weird situation. And that's what makes, to me, that's why I think it's like a niche or more unique thing. Like, I can't wrap my head around what is or isn't good. Like, is it good that it doesn't tell me anything and that's difficult as fuck to understand? Is that like interesting, or is that just bad design?
I don't know. I think that's a deeper conversation that like I'm sure we would probably agree on a lot of the same things there, because like again, that was one of my key critiques during the review we did. But like in terms of the niche conversation, right? Like I guess my thing is, would we call League of Legends niche, even though it's like one of the most popular games, there, right? Because it's like it's a bit more impenetrable if you've not played that genre of game, right?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to nail down is like I feel like games have become so different and varied and like crazy that like I feel like when we hop into these games that might be more approachable, or like games that might not be as approachable, right? Like, does the approachability of it determine the nicheness, or is nicheness driven by like the amount of people playing it? Because like I look at Triangle Strategy, and like Triangle Strategy might be a game that is more approachable than something like Elden Ring, but like it's a game that I'm not going to play because it's beyond me and in my understandings of a genre, right?
Yeah,
I'm not really a strategy game person. Is that niche?
That's why I feel like, to bring it back to something, and I forgot why we even got into this topic. Like, that's why I feel like it's not that I'm against having this conversation, because I think there's layers that are intriguing about it, like how we consume games and like how we are as players. But that's why for me, even though, I don't mind saying that, like, I think that's a niche genre, but to that extent, I feel like that's not that meaningful of a comment for me to make, because I would argue that if we looked at all of the different genres, I'd probably label most of those as niche. And then at that point, it's like, if I'm putting it all into this niche bucket, is the phrase niche even meaningful in terms of a categorization? I would argue it isn't, which is why I'm like, that is how I personally label it, but it doesn't really matter here or there. I think gaming has become so diverse and widespread that the very mass market thing is going to be a smaller amount, because there's just so many genres around. And I think that's true of like film and television and a lot of other things, where like there's stuff that's super popular, but then if you look at the all of television, there's a cajillion shows that I've never heard of, will never watch, because I only watch like mainstream stuff where it's like, oh, I watched Ted Lasso, I watched, like, I'm not deep in the weeds because I'm not. Yes, How Much Your Father, which I don't know if I have so many. Why did you bring this up? Why did you mention this?
Well, I just connect to your thread every time you're live tweet about it. And
you do be tweeting a lot about it.
You bring it over to an interesting thing.
I'm heavy into sitcoms, so like I'll go into the weeds on sitcoms because I know, anyway. But
you bring it to an interesting parallel though with cinema or TV, right? Of like, lots of times the best picture winner, right, is some indie movie that most people didn't see, right? It's not going to be the Batman or Spider-Man or whatever, like a mainstream thing that so many people went out of popcorn film, that I think something like a Horizon would be. A Horizon is this AAA extravaganza, giant thing, beautiful animations, yada yada, great acting or whatever. And then it's like, okay, cool, that has mass market appeal, that gets to everybody, right? Whereas an Elden Ring, which granted is a breakout game and isn't niche and is selling like hotcakes and doing all these crazy numbers, still is an acquired taste in the same way I think an indie movie might be an acquired taste to something that is the latest Julia Roberts motion picture.
Yeah, I think, and I feel that, and like the reason to bring it back around to like the whole conversation, right? Like the reason why I not even call it out, because I was just genuinely curious what we meant when we say niche. But like I think the niche thing comes back to the way that I think a lot of people look at Elden Ring as something different and something that is like other than like the video games that people typically play, because it does feel so unapproachable, which that a lot of that is on From Software, because a lot of times, like in a lot of their mechanics, they can make it unapproachable. And so I'm not like, calling out the audience or anything here, but I also do think that like, part of the like barrier to entry with Elden Ring is how people talk about it. Where for the longest time, like I couldn't get into Bloodborne because it was overstated how difficult and like unplayable these games were. And so like I wasn't interested in Dark Souls, because my bet, like, going back, right, when Demon Souls came out, like the early 2010s, maybe 2009. I had a friend Stevie, who was like my best friend, who, you know, we both had PS3s, played games all the time. And he was like getting into this Demon Souls game. He was like, dude, this game named Demon Souls, it's the hardest game ever made, is what they're calling it on the internet. And he got into it, and I was like, dude, I am not playing this game. You're telling me when I die, I lose all my materials? I'm never playing this. And it wasn't until Bloodborne where I was like, all right, I'm gonna start trying to play this. And like, I psyched myself up toward the beginning of it, and I was like, I don't think I can play this. But by the time I got into it, I was like, no, I love this. This game is not as hard as people make it out to see.
It does get overstated.
Yeah, it like gets really overstated. And like I think that scares a lot of people off from it. And so like, you know, I like, and again, like niche is a different thing, right? Like I don't think this is a way that you guys are trying to other Elden Ring or anything like that. But I think in terms of people's understanding of it, like the more I play Elden Ring, the more I am like, no, this is Breath of the Wild. Like this is just Skyrim, like in terms of genre and in terms of gameplay loop. Like the real thing that's a bit more the thing that's different about it is like, okay, it's a bit harder in combat, and then like some of the mechanics could use more explaining. But other than that, like the gameplay loop is pretty much there. That is like understandable and doesn't feel that entirely different from things that people have already played before.
Yeah, like the last thing I want to mention, like at least on my end, because again, I've only played like 4 hours of it, and I don't think I have like a lot to add in terms of where does this land in the, you know, the year and in gaming history, because I don't think I'll have anything to say unless I like finish it, and I also might not still have anything to say even if I finish it. Frankly, I just don't know. The thing that I think sticks out to me with Elden Ring is, like, I was, you know, playing it. Like I said, I got like 4 hours into it. I saw the first boss. I fought Margit a couple times or whatever. And then I was like, okay, I have 2 weeks. I'm going to go do something else. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm done streaming. So cool. The thing that stands out to me is like the heaviest differentiator, not even just the difficulty. There's something about it. There's like a secret sauce in there that like people that like those games love, and they can taste it. And they're like, this is the shit. And I like love it because of XYZ. And cool. I feel like I taste the same thing, but it doesn't do anything for me. And I'm like, what am I supposed to be tasting? And it's like, you don't pick up the flavors of the lime. And I'm like, not really. I mean, it doesn't taste bad. Like, I think it's fine, but I don't really get that. And to me, that's the biggest distinction on like, will people like this game or not? I think it totally varies player to player. You know, if you're interested, go in with an open mind and see what it does for you. But for me, like I start Elden Ring and I'm walking through and there's some like knights or whatever, and there's the summons and there's like a map piece, and I'm like, cool, all right, yeah, I'm here, and you know, we're fighting, and I'm trying, you know, to make sure I don't die, keep my shield up, and I'm going through the motions, and I'm doing things, and I'm thinking about how I want to do my build, and I want to go more magic oriented. But people will be watching me play and be like, oh my god, man, when I was here, I was just like, holy shit. And I'm like, why? And not in a condescending way. Like, I get that it's just a difference of something's different there, but I feel like I have that disconnect where, like, you know, and I'll be streaming and people will be like, well, I just feel like this isn't a you game. And I'm like, I would agree with you, but I've played games that I don't feel like are for me, and I can tell that I just don't enjoy it. It's not that I don't enjoy it. I just feel like it's like I just don't have that love there that other people have for it. I think
that might be also the internet too, because like you know, when talking about the Elden Ring during the review, right, I had people come at me and they were like, oh, this just isn't your game. And I'm like, no, this is specifically my game. This is a mixture between Breath of the Wild and like Bloodborne and shit that I fucking love. Like, you know, this is a game that's for people. But I also do think that like it is overall with all the things that we're talking about, right? It's like it's just different strokes for different folks where you know, like I'm typically not a big fantasy person. Like fantasy has to hit hard if it's gonna get me, and that happens sometimes. And that's happening with Elden Ring, where I do really enjoy the world and appreciate the like world lore and the enemies and the characters and the architecture and all that stuff, right? But I think like there'll be times where I'm playing with Andy, right, or I'll be watching Andy playing, and Andy will point out a thing where he's like, dude, how dope is this thing, right? And I'm like, all right, it's cool. Like I don't know if that's what I like. I don't know if that's what I like about this game, but it's dope that you like that for it. Whereas like I'm like, dude, this boss fight took me 2.5 hours to beat, and that's what I enjoy out of it, because like I'm just, I guess, a masochist in the way that like I like the tough, grueling boss fights, and I like good boss design and animations and all that stuff, and that's what gets me going. You know, I think it really is going to be a different thing for different people, right? Along with like exploration and shit like that I like as well. But I'm totally with you there. But like speaking of combat as well, right? Like that's Sifu's on this list for games that could be Game of the Year contenders. And Sifu's
I want to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. Of course, you can go to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames to write in, to get the show ad free, to get the show with the exclusive post show we do, to watch us recorded live, just like Cooper, Josh, G, and Cameron are right now. But guess what, Jack? You didn't go there. So here's a word from our sponsors.
Out to Babbel for sponsoring this episode. There's nothing worse than traveling abroad and looking like an idiot because you didn't bother to learn the slightest bit of the country's language. That's why Greg Miller has been using a little Babbel to learn French to speak to Genevieve. Babbel is the addictively fun, fast, and easy language learning app that has sold more than 10 million subscriptions. Babbel's 15-minute lessons make it the perfect way to learn a new language on the go. Other language learning apps use AI for their lesson plans, but Babbel lessons were created by over 100 language experts. Their teaching method has been scientifically proven to be effective, and you can choose from 14 different languages like Spanish, French, Italian, and German. Plus, Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you to improve your pronunciation and accent, which has been helping Greg Miller be able to communicate with Jen's extended family. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to babbel.com and use promo code KindaFunny. That's BABBEL.com. Code KindaFunny. Babbel, language for life. And shout out to Chime. Kick off 2022 with a better checking account with no monthly fees, no overdraft fees, no foreign transaction fees, and no service fees. Get all of that and then some with Chime, an award-winning app and debit card. They've also got over 60,000 fee-free in-network ATMs all over the place, like at most Walgreens, 7-Elevens, or CVS's. You can access your money when you need it, where you need it. Make your first good decision of the new year and join over 10 million people using Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/kfgames. That's chime.com/kfgames. Banking services provided by a debit card issued by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank NA, members FDIC. Get fee-free transactions at any MoneyPass ATM in a 7-Eleven location and at any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. Otherwise, out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply. Sometimes pay anyone instant transfers can be delayed. The recipient must use a valid debit card or be a Chime member to claim funds. Chime.com/KFgames. Shout out to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this episode. If you've ever been on the bus or the train with someone who's taken a phone call on speaker, you know that everyone who can hear them now knows a bunch of their private business. Using the internet without ExpressVPN is basically the same thing, so don't be that person. Did you know your ISP knows every single website you visit, and then they can sell that information to ad companies and tech giants who can use that data to target you? Well, ExpressVPN creates a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet so people can't peep in on your online activity. The best part of it is how easy it is to use. You just fire up the ExpressVPN app and click a button on any device. I've been using this forever. KindaFunny's been staying safe on the internet with ExpressVPN, and they're right. It could not be easier to use. Secure your online activity today at expressvpn.com/kindafunny and get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN free. That's expressvpn.com/kindafunny. expressvpn.com/kindafunny. Shout out to Upstart. If you've got multiple credit card balances each month and are getting by just paying the minimums, barely making a dent into your credit card debt, it can be pretty dang discouraging. Upstart can help you pay off your existing debt quickly so you can feel like you're finally getting ahead. Whether you're paying off credit cards, consolidating high interest debt, or funding personal expenses, over 500,000 people have used Upstart to get one fixed monthly payment. Upstart knows that you are more than just your credit score and is expanding access to affordable credit. Unlike other lenders, Upstart considers your income and current employment to find you a smarter rate for your loan. With a 5-minute rate check, you can see your rate upfront for loans between $1,000 and $50,000 and receive your funds as fast as one business day after accepting your loan. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/kindafunny. That's upstart.com/kindafunny. Don't forget to use the URL to let them know that we sent you. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Go to upstart.com/kindafunny.
So yeah, Blessing, back to it. On the board, right, we have Horizon Forbidden West at an 88, Sifu at an 80, and Dying Light 2 at a 76. Again, not contenders, but the bigger games that have come out this year that are on the PlayStation when we start talking about PlayStation Game of the Year. Do you think Sifu has a shot for you, for other people, for what?
I mean, if Elden Ring didn't come out, Sifu would be my number 1 right now. Like Sifu is my number 2 after Elden Ring. You know, I think it hits every single mark that it needs to hit, no pun intended, in terms of like, art design, presentation, scenery, combat, feeling different, new and fresh in the way that like the game flow is designed, where it is you're trying to beat the game before you age out, right? That for me feels like almost the Deathloop thing of, hey, hop into this game and like solve the puzzle of how to take out all these targets, but do it in a day, right? Like that is the like that premise, right? That loop of Deathloop, where Sifu does it in a way that makes me feel like I'm taking ownership of that loop, where I'm like, I'm going into levels and I'm like, all right, do I want to take the full level so I can hit the shrines so that I can level up more? Do I take the shortcuts, right? Like, all right, how low can I get on this level in terms of age, right? Can I get out of this first level without one death so that I can feel well set up for the next level? Like, there's that element of planning to it that feels so new and so fresh and so dynamic. But then also like the combat systems I think are just so good and so tight and so fun. And like for me, it was during our Sifu race that you can catch on youtube.com/KindaFunny games. That was me versus Tim versus Andy versus Barrett, where for us to see like who can beat Sifu the fastest, right? That was the thing that cemented it for me, where I had played Sifu for that 2.5 days during the review period, but I kind of rushed it so that I could have time to play Horizon and beat Dying Light 2, because though I had all those at the same time. And I adored it so much after that 2-day period during the review. And like coming back to it after not playing it during that time, I picked it up where I left off and like was blown away by all the same things, right? I was still looking at how good the art was. I was still looking at how well it ran, how like good each encounter is designed in terms of like placing enemies and in terms of like, knowing like in this room, I'm not going to do the takedowns because I don't want to activate like a super enemy, right? Like, they designed the game for you to really learn it and really understand the game room to room. And I love when games do that. And I think Sifu is a master at it. And so it's a contender for me, but I also don't know what outlet is going to give it Game of the Year. That's the tough thing, is like what outlet is going to give it to Elden Ring or Horizon?
Yeah, I don't see any outlet giving it to Sifu. I think Sifu, even though I'm in love with Elden Ring, and I think it's more that I'm just joyous that I'm finally into a Souls game more than anything else. I think Sifu right now is probably still my favorite game this year so far.
It'll be interesting to see how that hangs on. And this is the question again. Has the PlayStation Game of the Year already been decided? Jordan D wrote in and said, not at all. God of War Ragnarok hasn't even come out yet. And even if it gets delayed, Forspoken, which now won't come out until October, could still blow our minds away, even if it doesn't have the hype that Horizon did before its release. And that's not even considering what other surprises PlayStation may have in store for us. Parentheses, infamous reboot? Listen, me and Janet read that rumor. It's just a rumor. It's a rumor. Don't worry about it. Let's not all get caught up in this Sly Cooper and Infamous business, all right? Even though I hope so, but let's not get caught up in it. God of War Ragnarok, I think, is the big contender that hasn't been out. It hasn't been released yet. And when you look to the horizon, there's a bunch of different sleepers we have on the list. But in terms of contenders, Ragnarok's the one that has the most to lose, honestly, or try to live up to, I guess. And so the question then becomes, Blessing Adeoye Jr., do you think God of War Ragnarok has the stuff to dethrone Elden Ring?
To dethrone Elden Ring, entirely no. I do think it has the stuff to maybe split the vote a little bit, where you see some outlets go, yeah, no, God of War Ragnarok feels like a second coming of God of War 2018, and it hits all those same emotional notes and gives us all that story that we fall in love with. And I think you could see it go from like IGN gave it to God of War, GameSpot gave it to Elden Ring, right? Like PG 24/7 gave it to God of War, and they have that back and forth go that way. But it is that thing that you mentioned earlier too, of it being a follow-up to what many consider to be a masterpiece, and that gets
a known product.
A known product, right? And that's the same reason why I was like Breath of the Wild 2. If it comes out this year, I still think it gets, smacked by Elden Ring, because it is a known product, right? Like, what do you do that's new? And so I think that's gonna be tough for God of War Ragnarok, but I also think it'll speak to the people that Elden Ring didn't speak to as much, right? Talking about how it's different strokes for different folks. The people that
for the normies, not just
the people that like weren't able to get into Elden Ring because
you can just name me. It's okay. I won't
Janet
mind.
Garcia. No, yes. like the people whose jam just isn't Elden Ring, right?
Vote.
Like I think God of War Ragnarok is going to speak more for those people, and it's probably going to take it for those people if it comes out this year, which is the other thing.
Yeah, obviously a big question on that. Janet, do you think God of War Ragnarok has the stuff?
Yeah, and I think it'd be exactly what Blessing said, where Elden Ring seems like it's the front runner for Game of the Year in terms of like what the majority of the industry is saying, and even probably here as well. I mean, if we do it the way we did it last year, I think enough people would rank it 1 or 2 that it would probably get there, even though I'm not putting it on my list unless something really changes and I beat it. And then also like feel like I understand what was good about what I had played, which I don't think will be the case. Yeah, I think God of War has a potential because if history repeats itself, and even if it is retreading kind of the same ground, more the same in the way that Horizon was, I think Horizon also innovated in ways that I at least wasn't expecting. Like, there were things I definitely wanted that they did, but there were also things I didn't expect that happened narratively. And then there were also little things that I didn't expect mechanically in terms of quality of life stuff, where I was like, okay, they did the stash thing that I had predicted, but I didn't expect them to do, you know, the potion buffs and all these other layers. And like, I didn't think I'd see tall necks, but in like a slightly different way. But like, that different way was really good, and they kind of needed to do that. And I'm glad they did. Like, I think you can, you know, retread the same ground, but make it just a bit better and have that still have weight to it. But that being said, if God of War is treading the same ground and it was already better than Horizon, the way I'm kind of mathing that out is that it would come in scoring closer to like that 90, low 90s range, while Horizon's sitting at like an 88, which would edge that out. But again, Elden Ring, you know, that's probably going to take it for most places.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think God of War Ragnarok definitely has a shot. I think God of War 2018 is such a fantastic, amazing game that I could see God of War Ragnarok, you know, still living up to that and delivering on it. Sorry, I'm having an allergy attack this entire episode, by the way. But
Let it out.
I have been. You've seen me let it out several times, blessing. I think that bar is so high, and I think that it falls into that Jeff Grubb. You know, this is great, but it's just more of what we had before, and I think that's why Elden Ring, you know, got to have the benefits of being a quote unquote sequel, right? But not being a sequel, where it is just, you know, piggybacking off of the Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Dark Souls hype that people know and have talked about for years and years and years and years and years. And then you're like, here's a brand new fantasy world that, you know, George Railroad Martin's involved with. And we're going to get out there. We're going to give you this thing. And it's a starting point for everybody to jump into. That's great. Whereas, you know, God of War, you know, we talked about it much like Aloy at the launch here of Forbidden West, and using the same, oh my God, she uses the same animation to jump off the tall neck. It was the same thing when Ragnarok footage got shown. Oh my God, it's the same animation to get into the boat. Like, that's how the standard that people have, some people have, but the eye people have to, oh, this is more of that. And I liked that, but it's just more. What caught you off guard this year?
See, and that's the thing. Is like, I feel like there's been such a discounting on like what God of War Ragnarok's potential most likely is. Like, yeah, you're gonna get like some similar engine stuff and, you know, animations and stuff like that, and yeah, like, it's gonna be a follow-up in the sense like a moment-to-moment gameplay isn't gonna be so freaking different or crazy or anything, unless, you know, Kratos dies halfway through and we play as Atreus, right? Like,
hell yeah,
it could happen. I
like,
hope
which
it
could
happens.
happen.
I mean,
like,
back to what.
but
The more I play these PlayStation exclusives, the higher those odds get. I'm like, these are all the same game.
But I think in like the new ways that it will deliver is like enemy types and like all of those things that make those fights special, to make that combat stand out so much in the first game, is going to be really the diversity in like the world. And we're already seeing that in like the little bit of gameplay that we saw in that trailer. Like, we're going to get that. And I think like if the game can deliver that with, you know, the same height of emotional punches that it did not hold back on in the first one, like, I do think it takes over Elden Ring in like Game of the Year conversations in that sense, because it's more accessible to a wider audience than Elden Ring.
And that's a great point, Barrett. And that is also the hope for it too, that I hope what we've seen is from a very small slice, right? I want them to do Metal Gear Solid to me. I want to play this game and be like, oh my God, really? Like, I would want nothing more than that. I think that benefits them. But it's that fact that we didn't see that with Horizon, right? We did see Horizon Forbidden West be more and be great and be awesome and have diverse locations and maybe locations you weren't expecting and have great stories there. But it wasn't like a complete, yeah, you're Atreus or you're into this new thing.
Also, like, those are... And this is just, again, we're talking about like you know, biases and stuff like that of just like, you know, comparing God of War 2018 to the, you know, the original Horizon. Like, I think one game has the sauce and the other one very much did not. And so like I think, again, like,
I mean, you're not wrong.
seeing the
right?
follow-up to Horizon, like, yeah, that's what I expected from Horizon, where it's like thinking about the possibilities of what a God of War 28 sequel could be, knowing what that team like delivered in that first game. Like, I guess
for me, right, like the idea of like new enemy types and like a new skill tree and like new locations in the world excite me for God of War Ragnarok, the follow up to God of War 2018. Don't excite me on the level of like Game of the Year level. Like, if we're talking about enemy types, right? Like, I feel like if you're comparing that to Elden Ring, like Elden Ring has the most enemy types I've seen in a video game, right? Like, I think It's there's still going to be that comparison of like, what is the special sauce that God of War Ragnarok has that like it'll need to find, and maybe it is like kill off Kratos in the first hour and you do plays Atreus, which like, man, what a twist that would be, and I'd be super into it, right?
I've never seen it before.
We've never seen it before. Kratos is killed with a golf club. But like maybe it's that, but like but I do think that for me, what made God of War 2018 so special was one, the shift in perspective. It was the one shot. It was the story feeling like such a standalone special thing. You know, them going up the mountain to spread the mother's ashes, right? Like it felt so personal and it felt so contained to this one game. Where God of War Ragnarok being the follow up to that one game, is it going to do something that feels contained and as special? I think that's where it gets difficult for me. Not in the thing that like it won't live up to the original. You know, I think that's very possible. I think that would be dope. But in terms of it hitting us the same way that like God of War 2018 hit us, because it felt so different from what came before.
I like this one. I have a question to pivot to, but I like this question from or a comment from the live chat. Bander SN talking about what's going to be game of the year. Should you play God of War? Yes. Should you play Elden Ring? Well, answer a couple questions.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
That is like such a, a real conversation different outlets and different people come down to of what makes game of the year for them. Where you can sit there and it can be like, as critics or, pundits or whatever we all are and what you want to call it, right? It is this conversation that like you can sit there and objectively look at Elden Ring and be like, well, X, Y, and Z, this is it. But then what does your outlet do and what does your list do for what's your favorite thing and what you would recommend and all these different things. I always talked about it for IGN, right? Like even for KindaFunny, like, I mean, actually more IGN, actually. No, for Elden Ring. KindaFunny, I think I vote for what I care about. But at IGN, it was always for me, like, I always wanted when I voted on Game of the Year, when I'd make an argument at the office for Game of the Year, it would always be like, listen, this is the game of the year for IGN, which means that for the rest of time, people will look back and be like, what was the best game of the year? What was the game that you looked to? And this was the pinnacle of video games. Nothing did it better, yada, yada, yada. And I always reference the fight between Journey and Walking Dead, where that year, I remember I was the one who reviewed Walking Dead. I had, argued for it for a number of different things or whatever. And when it came down and went around the table to me, I was like, listen, like, it's got to be Journey, because are we going to say Walking Dead season 1's the best game of the year, and then I'm going to cut to all these like fucking bugs I had and like the game crashing and stuttering as Lee tries to climb a ladder? It's like, no, like they're both great games. They're both fantastic games. But if I'm going to sit there and take one game and be like, this is the game that I think, deserves a place in time as this highest honor, it can't be this game because in this one very specific fight. And so like to get to hear like what that means for God of War versus Elden Ring face off, who knows? You have to play Ragnarok, but this is a Bander's argument here, right? Of like, Elden Ring isn't a game you recommend to everybody, but it's a fantastic, amazing game. Like, what is that? Where does that go?
Is that the same as the Oscar conversation, where the Oscar winner isn't always the movie that you recommend to everybody, right? Like, it's not the Marvel movie, it's not the action, it's not Fast and Furious, right? But it is a thing
it's usually
that
the
rises above
safe,
an art.
like white savior movie. That's what it is.
Yeah, which is Elden Ring.
But to your point there, Blessing, is
really
that does work to does go to my argument then, right? Of like different outlets where the MTV Movie Awards movie of the year isn't the same as the Oscars because they're not trying to do the same thing. They're not actually out there trying to make the same thing.
I think too, everyone does that like conversation differently, like or they might just do vote. There might not be a conversation, it's just votes, like, and then also like there's a bunch of other layers that go into just like those structures. So for me, I always pick my game of the year as the game that I feel like was the best game to my ability as a critic. And by that, I mean like what I had time to spend with. Like, obviously, I would argue game of the year every year is always inherently flawed because I didn't even play every game that came out this year. It's impossible to. I would not be able to.
Yeah,
It's never truly even the game of the year. It's the game of what critics have played or even what fans have played if you do like a fan voted section. Like it's never going to be an all encompassing thing. So I don't feel, I'd like to be able to spend more time or know more about different genres or styles and be able to just engage with as much as I can. And for me, I'm always trying to hone that craft. Like I feel like that's both my job and what I like to do with this. Like there are things I know really well and things that I learn and add and build, and I have fun doing that. And to me, this career feeds into that hobby so well because it's this continual loop of me just having all these different experiences and sharing them with all of you who are listening. But yeah, like I wouldn't put Elden Ring as my number one because I don't feel that way about it.
For sure.
I can acknowledge that like maybe Blessing does, and I can even be like, you know what, Blessing, I feel like you have the insight here, so like I'm not going to fight you that much because I trust both your judgment and then the larger conversation. But I wouldn't even argue that there's any such thing as like
Nobody trusts
Save
my
it
judgment.
now. You're never gonna hear them again. Anyway, but like this has happened from time to time. But like Returnal, same deal. I'm like, I can't really assess this even. I'm kind of just going to toss to people that know more about it. That's true for other genres too when you get down to the genres.
Like,
so
I think
like
that's the thing is you're talking about video games which are so varied and diverse, and like, you know, as much as I love Elden Ring as an open world RPG adventure, right? Like, how do I compare that to Life is Strange, or how do I compare that to like an arcade game, and how do I compare that? Like, at the end of the day, all of what we're saying makes no sense because video games are so different, right? They're more different than movies are, where movies are just people on a screen talking to each other. And I guess they don't have to be people on the screen; it could be aliens on the screen. You know, like movies are a thing we watch and like
sometimes they have to talk to each other.
Sometimes they don't talk. But like movies are a thing we watch and take in for 2 hours, right? Maybe 15 minutes. Whereas video games are things that we interact with in a billion different ways, right? There are card games that we can play, right? Solitaire game of the year because it's so solid, right? Like, is like fucking Tetris a perfect video game? How does that compare to Inside?
Yes.
Like, none of this makes sense.
It's better.
And like at the end of the
this
day,
is all
like
making sense. What are you talking about?
this is all making sense. But yeah, like it can't be a robotic conversation because, right? Like we're all humans. We all play our own things, and that's for me, right? Like, I look at Game of the Year, I'm like, cool. What for me are the most special games that came out this year? For me, what is the most special game that came out this year that I played and I absolutely loved and adored, and is the best thing I've played in a long time, right? Like, you know, when you start to like try and drill down and compare and contrast like why God of War Ragnarok compares to Elden Ring, compares to Horizon, you know, it really is going to come back to like that individual conversation. Except for the part where the question wrote in and said, "What about Forspoken?" Which I don't understand why you think Forspoken is going to be game of the year. No offense to Forspoken, like it looks cool.
Anything can surprise you. Like, I don't know. I mean, I would agree with, I would be pretty shocked if that game comes in at even like in the 8s, like in terms of Metacritic and larger conversation. But like, you never know, and I like to be optimistic. Why not? Let's just see what it is. I actually am intrigued by that game, and I was looking forward to it. I feel like the more there's coverage of Forspoken, the less excited I am about it. Like, something about the way it's looking, like, it's giving me Recore vibes, which is like a deep cut of like, I was really looking forward to Recore. Like, I think Recore is why I bought my Xbox One. Like, that was just so up my alley. I thought it looked really cool. I was like, yeah, it's giving like kind of like Jack and Daxter vibes in some ways. And you got robot dogs. Like, yeah, like let's go. How can it go wrong? And then I played it, and it was just such the perfect storm of like a disappointing game. Not even that it was, well, I think some elements kind of were bad, but like it was like a little broken. It was too empty. It had some good ideas, but it wasn't quite there. And Forspoken, the vibe I get from it is that it's going to be a game of good ideas that never quite come together. But I'm excited in that I see some of those ideas, and I hope they come together, and we'll see.
It looks to me like the AA PS3 games I always used to talk about and review that came out all the time. That, like, yeah, you enjoy fine, but it's not a game you talk about. And I'd love to be wrong. Don't get me wrong. Like I think the trailers and the concept are interesting. I'd love to be wrong when it actually ships, but who knows? And that's the thing, you guys. We had built out the list on the board with the contenders. Then there was a sleeper column. I'm just going to read through them all. We can pick if anybody wants to make an argument for it. But sleepers that were on this list are Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Ghostwire Tokyo, Saints Row, Forspoken, Stray, Little Devil Inside, Cult of the Lamb, Goodbye Volcano High, We Are OFK, and Midnight Fight Express. I don't even know what Midnight Fight Express is. I need to look at that.
It's like
Midnight Fight Express has Sifu as its competition. It's like a cool looking beat 'em up game that kind of looks like Sifu, but from the top down.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I imagine it'd be like more casual in the sense that I struggle to imagine the button input being quite as intricate / interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think those are games that
nice
look
word
good.
Choice.
Yeah.
Like, how do I say this in a nice way? Intricate and interesting.
These are ones that I look at, and it's like I think all these games. I mean, again, what's going to be my game of the year at the end? I don't know, and I love that, and I like being surprised. And I never would have told you at this part last year that I thought Life is Strange: True Colors would have been my game of the year for 2021. But I look at this list and I'm like, I don't think any of these will end up competing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm excited for Ghostwire Tokyo. I've done the behind closed doors demo. I guess everything's behind closed doors now on the internet. But it was like, I watched that, and it was the same thing that basically was covered in that state of play they did. And Ghostwire Tokyo is decidedly my jam, and I'm interested to play that game. But that is going to be a niche game that I think is going to be. A lot of people are going to be like, all in on thinking it's cool, and then I think there's going to be a lot of turned off by it. But I don't know if people are going to walk away being like, it's game of the year.
Yeah, I feel like when you're talking about Tango Gameworks, right, you're talking about Evil Within and Evil Within 2, which are games that I feel like I only hear about once a year, if that.
Halloween?
I don't think I heard anybody mention the words evil within last year at all. Like those are like when we're talking about niche, I think those do categorize in the niche category. But like Ghostwire Tokyo is one that I'm excited for. I think it looks really cool. I think it looks really fun. It looks like a mixture between what Tango Gameworks does with Prey and BioShock, and like I think that's gonna be for a lot of people. Like I'm looking forward to that more than I'm looking forward to Forspoken. And then there is Saints Row, which I think we've gone back and forth on Saints Row before on Gamescast. That like that's a game that I'm looking forward to, but I also don't think it's going to shine in a year full of open world games. I think Saints Row will be lucky if it's Dying Light 2 levels of, oh shit, this is a fantastic time. Like, actually, let's play this. I need to tell you about Saints Row, right? Like, I hope it's at least that good. And I love Saints Row. I loved Saints Row 3 and 4. And so like if I can get that level of dopeness, then yeah, like sign me up. But I also don't think I'm gonna put it up against the God of Wars and the Elden Rings and the Horizons. And yeah, Stray looks cool.
That's the thing. Stray looks cool, and I know people are always flipping out because it's a cat. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna play it. It looks neat, but is that game of the year? Like I hope. I hope every game that comes out is game of the year. But I don't.
If it was a dog game and it looked like Portillo, you'd think it was game of the year.
I mean, I would for sure. Don't worry about that. You know what I mean? It's pretty easy to get my vote for game of the year. Superman is it? Are the Ghostbusters in it? Like it's come on. This is simple. These are easy things you're all missing.
What about did Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad get delayed?
Suicide Squad did. Gotham Knights is still happening.
So none of y'all believe in Gotham Knights out here?
We'll
I forgot
see
about
if Gotham Knights is still happening.
But do you believe in it, or are you just here asking questions?
I think Gotham Knights is going to be a lot of fun. I don't think it's going to be game of the year based on what we've seen. But
I think Arkham City is like one of Barrett's favorite games of all time.
I think it'll be one of those things where like, if it's good, it'll be on my top 10. But I don't think, like what Greg's saying, like I don't think it's going to be like this. Holy shit! Everybody's talking about Gotham Knights. Especially
because Barrett doesn't want to play with me right away. He wants to play for one by himself and then play.
In terms of like indie hits, I think Cult of the Lamb could really take it, assuming it comes out this year. I'm looking it up now, and I'm like really trying to really describe what this is. You're basically like a cult leader, and you're sort of going around to like these randomly generated worlds and like fighting off enemy hordes, and then you're continuously like building your flock with like resources to build new structures and to like perform these rituals. I think the art style is highly appealing. I think if the combat lands, like this could be in that kind of vein of, the indie game that sort of sets things on fire, like similar to how Inscription and Death's Door was. Again, not saying that this game will be at that level or that it's even trying to, replicate any of those things, any of the things that made those games special. But I think, thinking about what does that standout indie, and I think Cult of the Lamb has a shot at taking it, with, of course, Little Devil Inside, that's been a mixed bag of like, are we excited, are we not excited? And it's a game we're all looking at in the PlayStation ecosystem, but I don't know what's going to become of that once it drops.
Cult of the Lamb is definitely, like, I think one of the indie games I'm most excited for, because you look at the art style and you look at the gameplay, and it just looks like a fantastic time. And also, like, there's a game called She Dreams Elsewhere, which I feel like I talk about every single year, but it just never comes out. But like, that's a game
you do, and that's true though.
yeah, it just keeps getting pushed. But like, it's a game I'm really looking forward to. Right, it's like an Earthbound, Undertale style game with a really cool art style, and that's one that I'm holding up there for like that indie game conversation. But like, to go back to Gotham Knights for just 1 second, right? Like, Gotham Knights strikes me as one that could catch us off guard and how much we could love it. Right, like I forget if Outriders was on your list last year, Greg, but like, it strikes me as if like, what if you had a Batman Arkham game, but we were playing it together like the way we were playing Outriders, where it is like, hey, why not play the Batman game that's co-op? Because we all like Batman, and like, we like playing co-op games together, and it becomes that stream favorite game that we're like, oh shit, this worked. Like I could see it sneaking.
But game of the year, like it'll be, it'll be, you know what I mean? It'll be. I can see. I definitely Barrett, I think, is more questionable on it than I am. I think it's gonna be a fun game. I'm gonna have fun playing it, but I don't think it's gonna be one that like
I'm
turns heads that way.
I'm hopeful for it. It's just like one of those things of like, I'm more doubtful of like if it still comes this year is my thing personally. Sure. It is one of those things, like, I don't know if it's going to reach those heights of the Arkham games for, like, conversation of, like, when those games were coming out, like, people were talking about those games of, like, how good video games can be and how good superhero games can be. I don't know if it's going to set the world on fire the same way those games did. But, I'm looking forward to it as a Batman fan. If it delivers me a fun Batman game, it'll be, again, on my personal top 10 most likely. But, yeah, I don't see it taking over the larger conversation. With Cult of the Lamb, I forget the game that the developer made before this, but it was like called the Adventure Pals or something, 2 or 3 years before this. And
they made that?
I believe it's the same developer. It might be the same publisher.
It is the same developer.
Yeah, and so that was really fun. The moment-to-moment gameplay kind of seems similar. Hold on, I've got like a motorcycle race happening right outside my house. I don't know if it's really going to set the world on fire the same way the Adventure Pals did. I don't even know how I found out.
Wait,
about
did the Adventure Pals set the world on fire?
Sorry, I don't think it's gonna set the world on fire in the same way that like the Adventure Pals did not set the world on fire.
God,
I feel like Adventure Pals hit because it was like
threw me off.
semi-early Switch era. Like I feel like, and not even in its release, but I remember like hearing about that game on NVC because like it was that era of like there were 8 games on the eShop and we're playing 6 of them.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of, and that's no shade to the game. It was a really cute and fun platformer.
It came
but
at like an opportune time when like smaller games were able to actually get like good smaller games were actually able to get highlighted on the Switch. Whereas now it is been taken over by shovelware. Whereas like I think Cult of the Lamb like at least gameplay wise doesn't seem anything like too majorly different moment to moment. The art style is like pretty much the same, just like a different kind of world and vibe. So yeah, I think that's going to be a game that's like going to come and go in the large pantheon of the conversation, but it is going to be a game I could see that like us, like the 4 of us might like be really into, but I don't know if it like really gets into that game of the year conversation.
Like Nobody Saves the World.
See, I was thinking that, but for the opposite. Like, I really like Nobody Saves the World, and I like pulled up, and I'm like, Nobody Saves the World, right? This is fire, and everyone's like, I mean, it's something I had downloaded. I was like, I don't know.
I think we're overhyped.
Min-Max thinks it's game of the year. So again, it's all.
Stop hanging out with those Min-Max people, Janet. I told you they would warp your brain.
I will when you will. You're hanging out with me right now, so.
I know.
Damn.
But you're a free agent. I'm hanging out with pen to pixels. You know what I mean? You're just bringing back COVID.
You know
from
that
there.
new site layout just dropped. You know,
I know it did. Your mobile looks good.
Yeah. Thank you. Isaiah did it. Like I didn't develop any of that. Like he just developed and designed all of it. So yeah, I just write the words.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've all agreed. PlayStation Game of the Year hasn't been decided, but it probably has.
Yeah, so we can just stop playing PlayStation games.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, there was a whole conversation in here about like, does PlayStation Game of the Year have to be exclusive or whatever? It's like, no, it doesn't, but it is an interesting argument. But
I will also say that like Michael Haim has been playing Gran Turismo 7, and it might be his game of the year because that man is about to buy a racing wheel.
I saw him tweet that today. He's going to buy a wheel. Yeah.
They got really into that game. They're like, this is my first time driving a car, and it changed my mind on life.
If you're into cars,
I don't know.
Gran Turismo 7 might be your game of the year if you're into cars, according to Michael Haim, because he's infatuated with it. He can't get enough of that game. So let's not leave that one out there too. Shout out to that game.
We're not going to play it, so we're going to leave it out.
Yeah,
exactly. At the end of the year, we're going to leave it out. But like,
I do kind of regret not playing it though, actually, because I didn't pick up a code for it because I'm like, no, I'm not going to play it. Like I'm going to let people who are going to play this like do it. But then there was so much like weirdly specific hype around it of people who like I've never driven a car in a game before, but I'm never going to stop. And I'm like, maybe I should have played this. Maybe there's something here, but. I don't know.
It's never too late. Snowbike Mike on our Gamescast review. He's right there with you. Or
That's
he's
what
like,
I was thinking
never played,
of.
I want to do it.
Like he loved it so much that I'm like, maybe I should check this out. I don't know.
Blessing, I'm excited to check out some PlayStation updates. What do you got for me?
I got a bunch of quick hits here. Let's start off with Project Spartacus seemingly getting closer.
Just come out already.
We talked about, I think last week we talked about.
We talk about it every week.
We talk about it all the time.
We have to stop talking about it because we have to save it for when it's going to come out. Not this though. You read your thing.
This is a quick hit. So like last week we talked about Shadow Warrior 3 coming day and date. The latest thing is that there are some NeoGAF users who are saying that like when they're signing up for a new PlayStation Plus subscription, they're getting free PlayStation Now for the same duration with it. And so that's something to keep an eye on. You know, maybe it means something. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe they're getting errors, but it seems like if you're new to PlayStation Plus, you might be getting PlayStation Now with it, at least in some territories. And so have fun with that. There's also the question of, do we want a new Infamous and Sly Cooper? I asked this question because last week, the rumor mill was going. People were talking about how there could be a new Infamous and Sly Cooper in development, and also that there could be a PlayStation event on the way. This came from account NGT on Twitter at ACC NGT. We've we've referenced them a bit in the last few months because like they're the account that had the Quantic Dream game, Star Wars game. Like they're talking about it before the game actually got announced at the Game Awards, and so people have been leaking that and like a few other scoops back to the account. And so it seems like it's a person that might know what they're talking about, even though that always feels kind of sketchy to me. And so big grain of salt with all of this. Don't take it as gospel by any means because I don't think I believe it. But ACCNGT on Twitter is saying that a Sly Cooper and a new Infamous are in development.
Do you want it,
Blue
Blessing?
Point. Blue Point, man.
Do I want
What are they
it?
up to?
Yeah. That was your
Not
question.
really.
Yeah.
No, I already don't really care about Sly Cooper. Like we got like we're in a world that has Ratchet, Sackboy, and Astrobot, and so like I'm covered on the 3D platformer front, and then also we have Spider-Man and Wolverine. Why do I need Infamous? No offense to Infamous, but like come on, bro.
There's never enough platformers.
I mean that's true. That's true. But also
I'll
Sucker
take that
Punch.
Sly Cooper if you're not picking it up. I'll take that.
Did you play all the other Sly Coopers?
No, I started the first one on PS Now. But like this would be the time that I could do it if they like either did a remake or a continue.
Just
say
play them now. Just play the ones that are out now. And I'm with you of like
this isn't a strong enough rumor that I want to wait. But like I will say though, playing them now, you feel the age of like it being really petty with like you have basically one hit unless you pick up like an item, and then like the depth perception could be a little better. Like when platformers age, they age in varying degrees. And I think Sly Cooper, if you like platformers, like how I'm like diehard into platformers, I can deal with the kind of
the jank,
not so great elements because I like a good platformer and I think it still has like really solid and fun design. But I wouldn't mind you just refreshing that because it's not like it ages very gracefully. It doesn't age like Super Mario 64, which also has its problems. But it doesn't age as smoothly.
Yeah, but like Mario 64 ages fantastically. It's wild how good Mario 64
is. Yeah, like it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Except for Barrett.
Just the camera. It's not too bad.
Go play Thieves in Time, Janet. Just go play Thieves in Time on your Vita.
Okay.
Anyway, I'd rather Sucker Punch make a Ghost of Tsushima 2 than Infamous.
I'm 100% with you there. My hope on this is that it's just an Infamous remaster. Infamous 1 and 2 on a one download or disc or whatever. Yeah, just ready to go.
Director's cut. Would that be wild if we did a Infamous 1 and 2 director's cut?
We've brought over all the UGC that we had for the Infamous missions you could make.
Are we done seeing director's cuts because for like a small era, I'm like director's cut. That's like PlayStation's thing, and then Isaiah was like, "Is that their thing?" Because I haven't made like that many of them, and I'm like, "Well, you got to like say it earlier than by the time it's established, or else it's like, what's the point?" But
I bet you get Last of Us Part 2. I think that you get Last of Us Part 2 as the director's cut. Yeah.
We've already gotten Ghost and Ghost of Tsushima director's cut.
And Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Oh shit, we did
Put some respect on Kojima's name.
I think we just need one more to really solidify it. I don't know.
Did I not say it? I thought I said Death Stranding and Ghost of Tsushima 2. Or sorry, not Ghost of Tsushima.
I think you both said the same thing at the same time.
It doesn't matter, right? We've gotten a couple of director's cuts in the past, and I think we could get Last of Us Part 2, like Greg's saying. What's left? I feel like is there anything left from late era PlayStation for director's cuts?
Probably. You know how it
is. Days Gone, but like they're not going to do that.
Spider-Man director's cut. You just bundle all the Spider-Man stuff together.
They did that with.
Oh yeah, they did the remaster. Yeah, you're right.
They probably could have called that director's cut and probably forgot.
I think
maybe they hadn't started. They didn't.
It's like, oh shit, we've already
it. But it was also too soon because that happened at the launch of Miles. Like it's too soon to do a director's cut.
Yeah, they didn't have it all set up.
But like, think how dope that would be though. Like if at PlayStation launch it was Miles Morales and Spider-Man director's cut.
See,
and
going back to the Last of Us Part 2 theory of director's cut that we've been talking about, I feel like for a year almost at this point, like make it an actual director's cut. The thing that like I've wanted from that game is like do a version of that. No, that's not what a director's cut is, but I appreciate it. Do a thing where like in the basis of that game, right? You do one character day 1, 2, 3, the other character day 1, 2, 3. Do it where it's character 1 day 1, character 2 day 1, character
that'd be dope.
1 day 2, character 2 day 2.
Like what they did with Beyond Two Souls.
Yeah, exactly.
Like change up the order and like kind of like I'm just fascinated like how the pacing of that game would differ, and if like going through that game for the first time, that was like the only thing I personally would have wanted to do differently was to change it. Yeah, the Barrett court.
We demand the Barrett cut.
Yep.
Cut the ending out and just leave the actual ending pieces.
We could probably make this happen with a bunch of saves.
I'm like, we're at another area. I'm like, I don't think we need to be here.
Shut up, Blessing.
I'm like, what else am I looking for?
I'm just saying, if you wanted to stream it, like you had the patience to like play up to each point in the last part 2.
Switch. Yeah.
Stop. So you get 6 PS4s.
Someone should do that, like a let's play cut of it.
And then you realize that it just does not work for the storytelling. You know, it's like, oh shit, I guess
Probably. It's like this doesn't hit the same.
They
It's all
did this.
built
They
up at
didn't
the
do
same
this
time.
for a reason.
It's almost as if they thought this through when they were constructing it. I
Who
don't
would
know.
have thought?
It's weird.
I feel like you guys are doubting, the cool opportunities for that, but whatever. Fuck you.
No, I agree.
It'd be
I think that'd be a
fun.
cool idea.
Could be fun. Why not? Like it would be nice for it to have more intriguing features than just this is the game
It's
again.
in
Because
performance mode.
especially because it's not really in the
Ray
spirit
tracing.
of the name of director's cut. Like it does kind of irk me that that's a term in a different like
But like both those games got
media.
features, right? Like Death Stranding got like new items and like a new story thing, I think. And then Ghost got the DLC.
Yeah,
the
but it's
Iki
not like
Island.
when I think of what a director's cut is, where it's like the stuff that got cut out. It's not that really. It's just like adding stuff in. It's just DLC.
yeah.
You know, it's not
That
like
makes sense.
an extended story or like a different ending or something. So I don't know.
You want like the deleted scene where like Abby lets Joel live. Spoilers.
Something like I don't know. There should be some. That's why it doesn't work for this medium because it's like a director's cut. The idea is it's what that original vision was that then got parsed down to make it to market in a way that was more digestible. That doesn't happen in games. Like there's
Metal Gear Solid
not
5.
To say they don't, not to say they're not whittling things. Well, that's like a whole nother
Could you imagine
thing.
if we got that director's cut?
I mean,
that could just
that would be
PlayStation
the. You
exclusive.
want to talk about a fucking killer stroke? Like PlayStation buys Konami or Xbox buys Konami. I don't give a shit. And then they announced that like at the same time. And the first thing we're doing is greenlighting Kojima Productions to work on Metal Gear Solid 5 director's cut.
cut. Oh man, what a world we'd live in. Speaking of what a world we live
What a
in,
world.
the last update I have for you here is that Housemarque is developing a new game, which isn't a surprise, but it isn't Returnal 2. This is Jason Guisal at Game Informer. He writes, in an award show interview with VentureBeat and an array of other outlets, narrative director Gregory Loudon, game director Henry Kruger, and managing director Ilari Kutinen were asked about the future of Housemarque, among other topics. Quote, in a time where games are changing, the people playing them are changing, how do you hold on to your identity? That was from the interviewer. Quote, we had our stint working on multiplayer games because a few years back, it seemed like you needed to have some kind of multiplayer experience. We tried that and we really didn't do it as well. But it's early days with us starting a new game, a new IP, concepting it out. We'll see what comes with that, end quote. That excite you guys? New IP?
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't play Returnal, so I'm like, let's just do something else because I didn't end up playing through that. But also I think I can take it or leave it on whether or not franchises continue. Again, I didn't play Returnal 1, so I don't really have any like ideas or, desires for a sequel to a game that I didn't finish the first one of.
I just, for me, it's so much of Housemarque's DNA is to move on to the next thing. Not that they've never done a sequel or something like that, but it is this, it's because they stayed with Stardust for a long time and I know it was a direct sequel.
Yeah. They had Alienation, which I don't know if it was a sequel, but like that was kind of the same world.
That was more Dead Nation. Alienation was like the spiritual sequel to Dead Nation. Then Super Stardust, they had Super Stardust HD and then Super Stardust Delta and then that was it, but I think they repackaged. It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, like, when I think of them, I think of a company that does make a new game every time. So I'd rather them do that and take, because especially now that they're owned and operated by PlayStation, like, awesome. Just do whatever. You don't have to worry about trying to sell the game, right? Like, they had done the whole thing with Arcade is Dead. They're talking about the multiplayer game that failed here. Like, Returnal was such a great way of merging their arcade sensibilities with a gameplay system that could get wrapped into more mainstream, I think. And so do something with that again. Yeah.
Then we won't have to have the conversation of, is Returnal 2 too much of the same from Returnal 1?
Exactly.
It's just a
It's
different
true.
game.
And
You
also,
just avoid the whole issue.
The way that Returnal is told and stuff like that, like there's really like
there's not room.
Yeah, there's not room to really do like a story sequel. Like it would have to be like more of a spiritual successor that you call Returnal,
like different character or something like that, which I don't think people would want.
Yeah, and like that's such a very like succinct story that there's not really a way to expand upon,
I also think of like what I want from Housemarque is like what I come to Housemarque for, and what I think people come to Housemarque for is like the gameplay loop, and like what is going to be the gameplay loop of this next one, right? And I think breaking off from Returnal and doing something different, and like figuring out what the new loop is, right? It could still be a roguelite, it could still be an arcadey shooty experience, but like what are you doing in this one to differentiate the gameplay loop from the last game, but still keep the arcadey spirit? I think that's what the exciting thing. And so with that, I'd prefer for them to work on something new and continue to like, innovate, elevate, figure out like what the next thing is.
I thought you'd have another rhyme there.
I was looking for that
Innovate,
too.
elevate, motivate their
Demonstrate.
staff to be creative. Demonstrate something fresh in the medium.
Blessing, before we get out of here, give me some picks.
Of course, the big hitter this week is going to be WWE 2K22. That's coming to PS5 and PS4 on Friday, March 11th. I only have one PlayStation pick for you here. It is a game called Young Souls coming to PS4 on Thursday, March 10th. Young Souls is a gorgeous 2D brawler meets story-rich action RPG. Fight hordes of belligerent goblins. Level up with hundreds of weapons and accessories. I can't read what that word is because there's somebody's icon is sitting on it. Explore, and journey between worlds and rebellious twins battle their way to save their foster father. It's a really cool looking beat 'em up.
It does look really
nice
cool.
art style. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of
Castle Crashers.
Tunchi.
Oh yeah, no, it does.
Yeah.
You're right. I see that too.
Yeah, that kind of art style and the beat 'em up gameplay, and so it also reminds me a little bit of Dodgeball Academia, except without the dodgeball.
Oh,
I see that too.
The
I
game
see that
made
too.
by Lil Wayne. I remember.
The Lil Wayne game,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
not the
Also
Lil
know
Wayne
that.
game. It just happens to be called Tunchi.
So
Wait, Barrett, go back a second in that video because they said a bad word, and what bad words? Oh wait, no, I know which one it is. They said goddamn. Sorry, I was looking.
you saw those.
Yeah.
You're like, what is that
I saw
word?
all
What are they
the
trying
stars,
to say?
and I was like, what the fuck are they saying?
Yeah.
Let's goon rocket.
Oh, man.
Usually we do what you've been playing, right? Blessing, you've been playing Elden Ring. We've talked it to death. I've been playing WWE 2K22, but it's one of the worst review embargoes of my life. Where we got the code yesterday at 7 a.m. and the embargo went up at 3 a.m. I'm sorry, we got it Sunday 7 a.m. and then 3 a.m. Monday was the embargo. So I have been playing it. I'm still very top level on it. I really enjoy the gameplay, the new gameplay system. Blessing, you and I were playing online before this.
Yeah,
Like
and you
I
beat my
enjoy
ass.
it. Yeah, well, I've also you had it done like one match or whatever. I played like a couple hours at that point or whatever.
The buttons.
Yeah, exactly. I knew the buttons. It is helpful. Based on that quick of a review timeline, I expected to have a glaring, here's why this game wasn't given to you and it's garbage and stuff. I haven't run into it yet. I'm enjoying myself. I think it looks good in terms of wrestlers' faces and what's going on and some of the lighting. Crowds can look bad at times, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to have a update on Gamescast tomorrow. We'll see how much more I'm able to get in today and tomorrow to get into it. But I'm not seeing a giant red flag. I need to obviously go through more of the modes and see if they're super shallow, but it's working. I'm enjoying playing it. I want to play more of it, which is something I haven't said about a WWE 2K game in a while. So there you go. That's it.
That was really good because I want to play more with you because I like we were talking about the idea of like a what wrestling federation or whatever, and I'm sure that might be far away, but like it's been such a long time since I've personally gotten into a wrestling game, and I like the idea of us creating our own characters and like creating our own stories or whatever, or just fighting against each other on stream and having.
Well, there's that, and then there's the GM mode that you square off against somebody who's either AI or a person, where you try to book the best matches and stuff.
Oh,
so
is that still in here?
Yeah, I don't know if it's online. Let me boot up while we talk because it's definitely on there for local play.
Okay.
But yeah, and it's the return to it. It's been gone for a while or whatever.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I'll have more on a Gamescast. But before we get out of here. Real final thing, Janet, you played Musical Story, and I want to hear about this.
Yeah, that's a game that was on my radar for some time. Then I kind of forgot about it, and then they're like, it's coming out like in 2 days, and I'm like, okay, cool, let me play this. But honestly, hearing that Barrett played it and really liked it kind of bumped it on my radar where I'm like, okay, I definitely want to get to this because I was already looking forward to it and Barrett says it's dope, so let's see what it's about. And essentially this is a rhythm game that's set in like a 70s era situation. You're exploring the memories of this guy Gabriel, who's like kind of coming to terms with this situation like through his memories. Like it very much opens with like him in the hospital, and then it cuts to like these moments of traveling across the country trying to get to Pinewood and play your music. And I really like this a lot. It's a fairly short game. It's like a 2 to 3 hour experience. I streamed the whole thing, beat it on stream. It's $15 everywhere except for on iOS. It's $5. So if you are looking to not spend as much money, but you want to check it out, there is that option for you. I played it on Switch and really liked it there because it is a 2-button input rhythm game. So I think there's a lot of things that make this feel distinctive in the genre and in the style, but one of them is that 2-button input of just the shoulder. It's on the Switch. What is it? ZL?
I hate that shit.
L2. ZL, L2, and R2. Y'all know what it is. It's just those, and it's really about getting the rhythm of the music. So you'll hear the song through, and then you have to replicate that rhythm as it plays, and you're playing along with it. But if you fail, and this is like on the default state, it'll have like a light underneath, like it goes in a sort of circle visually. And there'll be like a light to help indicate where you have to press if you can't find the rhythm or you're, failing to like keep the rhythm. And it's interesting too, because it's like the same song per sort of like level, but they have like different instruments that you'll be playing. So you'll be like playing the different instrumentation, like the guitar or the piano, whatever. And what I really liked about this was just really falling into the rhythm, because again, it is like a rhythm game with an emphasis on rhythm. I think a lot of rhythm games are about quick button input, dexterity, following along, and just kind of, okay, now I press A, now I press B, now I hold A while I press, whatever. This is just about like, hey, here's the melody and you have to play it. And, you hold the notes, and they kind of like simplify that, in actual written out music. It's, of course, you have like quarter notes, half notes here. Here it's like in sizing of the circles. So I like the ways that it plays with conveying that information to you as a player. I like the handholds that it has built-in design. You can also turn that off if you want a really hard experience. You can kick it up if you want a really easy experience. And it's all set to these really intriguing, almost mixed media style images. Like, I think the way they play with color and the way everything is drawn is really intriguing. I think the weakest part of the game is just that the story doesn't really do that much for me, because it's kind of like I'm so hooked on the rhythm element that I'm like barely kind of seeing the cutscene parts, and I'm kind of like, okay, I'm kind of getting bits and pieces. But at the same time, I don't think this game is about like, we have this really moving, amazing story to tell you. I think it's about having an experience that is tied to the music and getting lost in the music as you're sort of looking through these psychedelic images. And I think just as a game and as an experience, I think it's a really fun one to have. And it's one that kind of, for me, I felt like reignited some of my love for music. Like, I'm still, working on the piano and learning that, but something that I struggle with sitting down and practicing. I think anyone that plays an instrument, it's like, I gotta practice. It's like, I kind of just want to be able to do it. Like, I don't really want to have to put in the work, but like, this reminded me that doing that work can be fun. And it sort of gamifies that work, but in a very like easy, approachable way. So yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about it. At the same time, it's not like, absolutely mind blowing. It probably won't make my top 10 of the year. It probably won't even be in my top 20, but it's a game that I really enjoyed. And again, I don't think every game needs to be that. Like, most games are not in those big, high, upper echelon of my greatest of all time, my top 100, whatever. It's a fantastic rhythm game that I think people should play. So if that sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to check it out, because I had a really good time with it.
It does sound interesting to me. I will check it out. Thank you, Janet, for your reporting.
Same. I will also check it out. It sounds really
Yay,
cool.
let me know. Hopefully you guys like this after my Nobody Saves the World L.
It wasn't on you. You know what I mean?
My thing is, I think we overhyped Nobody Saves the World.
Yeah,
Because the game looked really cool, and Greg did the preview, and I believed Greg.
We had really high expectations after
right.
they made two of the best like modern Metroidvania games.
Thank you very much. But that's
Wait, they made Hollow Knight?
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been PS I Love You XOXO. Remember, each and every week we come to you with your PlayStation podcast. If you like that, you go to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, where we're about to go do the post show. You can also get the show ad free there. You could get it live, like Josh G, Madeline Stanley, and Cooper are all watching. And you can just have a great time and write in to be part of the show. Remember, we need you to write in about GTA Online next week. Give us both your tips, and then if you're a noob like us, questions you'd want Zach from Kotaku to tell us on how we're going to play GTA Online when it drops next week on the PlayStation 5. Everything else, youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, roosterteeth.com, podcast services around the globe. Like, subscribe, share. If you're using that Epic Game Store, use their creator code KindaFunny. If you're playing Rocket League or Fortnite somewhere else, like your PlayStation 5, you can, of course, use the Epic creator code KindaFunny and help us out. If you got Spotify, leave the stars now. Leave an iTunes review. Go to Blessing's Twitter. Follow that. Follow Janet's Twitter. Go and unfollow the Min-Max Twitter. All right? Just get rid of that.
Also follow @meta_cricket.
The Metacritic is taking over. The Metacritic is a big deal right now. He's giving us daily updates on what games are good and what games are not good. And we thank him for his service. Barry, you want to show today's opinion? Can you do that? There it is. Titanfall 2 is good, according to the Metacritic.
After 6 years,
that's a lot of likes.
I know. I love it.
People love the Metacritic.
I love the cricket.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a post show to do. But until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.